I had my hands full. So.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, please go downstairs.
Yeah, thank you. Now they're licking their hands and rubbing their faces.
It's fine.
They're so cute.
At the front desk, a guy's went to fill out a form and he has all these questions. He goes, well, no, I have to have the exact case number and all this before I put it down. And here you go. Yes, I do. Are you guys going to deny it? No, you can put any and all records with your name. No, I can't go deny it. That's not legal. I'm like, well, I'm the photo facilitator for the city, and I say it is. Oh, well, okay. And then another one, Trina's like, Miss Jamie, this guy's waiting on someone for planning. Or is there planning or zoning, one of them. And they said they'd send someone down, but I haven't seen anyone yet. And I go, well, they're across the street at the Ronald Reagan building. She goes, oh my gosh, they are.
Do they not like have a cheat sheet to help out? I think I've asked you this before.
I made a lot of it. Yeah, because when I stopped going down there, I made like a huge cheat sheet. Like, here's where you do here, here, and here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know when I started, we had to take all the calls, so we had this little 3-ring binder with all the little cheat sheets and all the little phone numbers when there was always that.
Yeah. I always just think it's funny when like citizens try to tell you about the no, I can't. That's not the
I wonder where they get their information.
Is that our new photo over there?
Where is she taking over somebody's position?
Adam.
Because he goes. He's on to finance. They always say that. That's a good place to start.
It's a good next stop.
say something? Oh. Good morning. How are you?
All right, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd. It is 9:01, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We will start with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be delivered by Reverend Paul Jackson of the University Congregational Church. We ask folks in attendance if you are both willing and able to rise for the invocation, followed again by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City Hall staff, guests, and assembled citizens of Wichita. I'm pleased to be able to join you, stand here, and offer this invocation. Would you please join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation? God of many names, we gather on this cloudy spring morning to begin this day's work of our community. Grant us wisdom as we work together for the people of Wichita, all of the people of Wichita, not just the ones we feel are deserving. Grant us open arms and open minds. We pray for patience as we work with each other, often a challenge in its own right, as we sometimes have significant divisions and disagreements, and how we should even begin to approach the challenges facing the citizens of our city. Grant us then open hearts and mercy-filled minds. We hope for a light that might show us the way, forgetting that we hold your light within us, and it might shine brighter than the sun if we but kindle it. Grant us the spark to keep our light shining, even on these cloudy, rainy days in spring when it seems the shadows might never end. Doing what's right isn't always easy, though the world may give us simple choices. Grant us wisdom to do what's right. Holy One, the world has given the people of this community opportunities for success and fulfillment. We have so many choices as to how we may proceed. I pray this morning that we always choose to do the next right thing, and may we, amid those myriad choices, always remember that the most important choice we can make at any time is to be kind. Always. We have many choices to make this day, but the choice to be kind needs to become our priority on this day and every other. We ask this in the name of the one who commanded us to love God and to love our neighbor. It's that simple. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on April 26, 2022.
Has every member had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, is there any discussion on the minutes? If there is no discussion, I'll make the motion to accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Proclamations. Professional Municipal Clerks Week.
If you're here to receive the proclamation for Professional Municipal Clerks Week, please make your way to the front. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides a professional link between citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. Whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, province, county, and international professional organizations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim May 1st through May 7th, 2022 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week in the City of Wichita, Kansas, and extend appreciation to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent.
Thank you so much for this recognition and this proclamation, and thank you, Bob and Dante and Kathy and the Mayor and City Council for their continuing support, for supporting us for continuing education and ongoing training. And I might be a little partial, but I think that we work for the best city in the state of Kansas, so thank you so much.
Madam Clerk.
Asian Pacific American Heritage Month.
If you're here to receive the proclamation for the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, please make your way to the front. You don't have to right now. Just gonna invite. If anyone is taking pictures, they can move to the front if they like. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month celebrates the culture, traditions, and history of Asian American and Pacific Islanders in the United States, beginning in 1978. And whereas the nearly 20,000 Asian American and Pacific Islander residing in Wichita consists of many ethnicities, languages, and achievements that embody the American experience. And whereas many leaders in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors in Wichita are Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And whereas the Wichita community has benefited through the cultural richness, diversity, and contributions of its local Asian American and Pacific Islanders with events and programs such as the annual Wichita Asian Festival and several other held throughout the calendar year. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in the City of Wichita, and encourage all citizens to join the Wichita Asian Association in supporting efforts that increase public education about Asian and Pacific Islanders in the United States.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you again for reading today's proclamation. My name is Tabin Azad, and I have the distinct privilege and pleasure of serving as the president of the Wichita Asian Association. Alongside me is our photographer, Mai Nan Dao, who's also a board member. We have Nancy Than, who's a general member of WA. Kavya Natason, who's a board member. We have Dina Tung, who is our Miss Cultural Ambassador from last year's festival. And lastly, we have Manasi Kulkarni, who is also a member and our APHM chair for the association. As you all know, this month is a special month. It gives us a special opportunity to celebrate, enjoy, and share the AAPI culture and identity with the community at large. But it's also an opportunity for us to learn more about the struggles that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have faced in the past and continue to overcome today. The truth is, Asian Americans play a strange role in the American melting pot. We're labeled as model minority, but the society uses us and our success to pit us against other people of color as justification that racism doesn't exist. But what does that mean for us as Asian Americans? It means that we're not quite similar enough to be accepted, but we aren't different enough to be loathed. It means that we're in a perpetual gray zone and society isn't quite sure what to do with us yet. They group us together by the color of our skin, and they tell us that we must reject our own heritages so that we can fit in with the crowd. And they tell us that our foreignness is the only identifying characteristic of us. They strip us away of our identities one by one until we are foreign but not quite foreign enough, American but not quite American enough, individual but only when we are not with other people from our native country around. I truly appreciate the efforts of this council. Don't get me wrong, Mayor Whipple, I know, has been extremely intentional about keeping us in the conversation of representation with city boards. Councilmember Johnson has made it an effort to come to our events and meetings that we've had in the past. And while we celebrate the achievements and the contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders that enrich our history and culture, it's important that we lean into that discomfort and acknowledge the additional determination, hard work, and perseverance that individuals must put forth to be heard and seen because of the structural discrimination and because of the inequitable institutional and systemic injustices that have manifested itself against Asian Americans in more recent years. It's crucial to recognize that racially motivated discrimination and harassment is at an all-time high with a national and local spike in hate crimes against the AAPI community, especially targeting its Muslim, its Southeast Asian, and South Asian members. And as a result of these challenges, Wichita Asian Association strives to be that solution to empower Asian Americans to advocate, foster cooperation, and promote cultural awareness. But we can't do it alone. We need the support of the community and elected officials, and we need to address the rise in Asian hate crimes, the declining state of mental health for Asian Americans, and the lack of representation that Asian Americans have in some of the community's largest conversations, including but not limited to mental health, substance abuse, workforce development, and much more. Before I conclude my speech, I want to make this an opportunity for anyone listening to be an ally for us, not just this month, but for the remainder of the year and for the foreseeable future. 1, learn how to pronounce our names and remember how to pronounce them. 2, don't ask us where we're from. Let us bring that up at a time that's appropriate. 3, try not to lump us as one. The struggles that I face are completely different from the other members of the Asian community. 4, support American Asian films, artists, restaurants, organizations such as Wichita Asian Association. And 5, be open-minded. With that being said, this month we have several events for the community to attend to. May 8th, if you are interested, is a Mother's Day event that Manasi has been working on at the Botanical Gardens, and it's free for mothers and Wichita Asian Association members to get to know more about the Asian community, enjoy some food and performances. May 28th, we're excited to host the first ever Wichita Asian Night Market here at NASCAR Park, and we invite anyone who's listening, even the elected officials, to come by, enjoy some food, drinks, and also just get to know some of the community members at large. Again, I'm excited to be here today, and I appreciate you, Mayor Whipple, and the council members here today. We want to keep this conversation going forward, and if there's a way for us to connect, please reach out. Thank you again for the proclamation, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Provider Appreciation Day.
Would Vice Mayor Tuttle please join me at the podium? And if you are here to receive the proclamation for
Provider Appreciation Day.
Provider Appreciation Day, please make your way to the front.
These are some of the cutest guests we've had in a long time. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas Child Start Incorporated and the City of Wichita Child Care Licensing and other organizations nationwide are recognizing licensed child care providers on this day, and whereas over half of the children under the age of 6 nationwide are estimated to spend some time in non-parental care arrangements on a weekly basis, which provides critical enrichment opportunities and nurtures development for children of all backgrounds and is a vital building block in our state's economy. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has created tremendous hardships for Kansas families who depend on quality child care, and for licensed child care providers who have continued to meet the needs of families while risking their health and financial stability to remain open. And whereas Kansas recognizes these hardships and has provided much needed relief to licensed child care providers to help sustain the viability of licensed child care by distributing millions of dollars in relief funding and support services during the pandemic. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim May 3rd, 2022 as Provider Appreciation Day in the City of Wichita and encourage all residents to recognize licensed child care providers for their important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, and City Manager. My name is Tanya Bullock. I am a Program Director at Child Start in Wichita, and I just want to thank you for allowing me to address this very important and very timely issue of child care today. Child care providers have a very long history of offering quality early care and education to our youngest children and families. And the pandemic definitely created obstacles for our local child care licensed providers here in Wichita. But while they were faced with these challenges, they never hesitated to provide consistent quality care to the families. And you see, we roll deep in this community with our providers, and they don't hesitate to show up and show out. Wichita is also a strong community, and it has a history of investing in early care and education. Access to quality, affordable childcare is important. The results improve the quality of employment, hiring, retaining skilled workforce. It's the forefront of our economy. Without quality, affordable childcare, we can't rebuild our workforce and improve our economy. So this special day is really important because it's the first step in the direction to correcting our childcare crisis, because it is a crisis right now and we are addressing it. I brought a few friends with me today. Right now, Sana, she's a parent who during the pandemic, her husband lost his job and it forced them to very quickly have to find jobs and childcare. But during this search, childcare wasn't just a search for convenience for them. They needed quality childcare so that they can go find work and feel safe and comfortable where their children were at. Regina Miller, she's been an early childhood educator for over 40 years in Wichita. For her, she's dedicated her life to enhancing the lives of children. And what she wants people to know is they're not just providing care for children, they're providing quality early care and education for children. They're enhancing the lives and preparing them for lifelong success before they get into school. Karen Clemens, who brought all her littlest of friends, she's owned a family childcare business for over 35 years in Wichita. What's been most impactful for her, we're not just coming today, by the way, this is very, very important for her, it means a lot, is the impact she's had on the children that she's been taking care of all their lives. She had a 14-year-old show up recently to her home just to tell her how important she was as a child. And one of the biggest things, and today she can check this off her list, is taking her children on field trips. And field trips are so important to her because it's that real life experience. And she takes her children on field trips to the fire station. And one day that child might be a firefighter right here in Wichita. And we might see 6 mayors moving in the future just from this. So today we're celebrating examples of quality care and education right here in Wichita, and this is just a step to raise awareness at the connection between access to quality childcare and the improvement between employment outcomes. So I'm honored to support this community and tackle a lack of quality, affordable childcare and work alongside amazing people. I couldn't do it without the community. We can't do it alone. Biggest supporters, Adrienne Ladd, her team of licensing. Vice Mayor Tuttle has been on board from day one. I have a team out in the audience. You don't see them, but they're out there. My Early Childhood Connections team, Child Care Aware, Chris Nicholson's here. We can't do it without a team. So thank you to everybody for this day. You don't know what it means to our people in our early childhood community. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Public agenda, Todd Ramsey. Transparency needs to make sense.
All right. Getting into our public agenda, folks will have 5 minutes to bring up anything they like that has to do with city government, and we ask that that when you see your time is coming up to wrap up as quick as you can. Welcome.
Sir, good morning. You guys are just getting bombarded with cute guests this morning. You're welcome. My name is Todd Ramsey. I live at 5421 Lambsdale. On April 15th, 2022, at the City Council Agenda Review meeting, Mayor Brandon Whipple engaged in an interesting attempt to justify his vote against the MRO incentives and bring the issue up for a revote to publicly correct his vote. What resulted was an embarrassing display of immaturity, a clear lack of leadership, and petty, unhelpful politics. The next morning, Mayor used his Facebook Live video to try and reframe that conversation into his championing of transparency and accountability at the city level, calling out his political adversaries as the ones causing the problems, one council member in particular, who Mayor Whipple claimed was trying to stir up controversy to get quoted in the paper for dozens of people to see. During both the agenda review and Facebook Live, I commented, sharing my disagreement with the mayor's tactics and message. The following Monday, I discovered my comments had been removed from the video and that I had been blocked from the official Brandon Whipple Facebook page. I didn't use profane language or say anything that could pose a threat to him, his family, or the city, potentially legitimate reasons to block someone. I just disagreed. I sent a text message to the mayor inquiring about this. Here is the end of our short exchange from the mayor. Quote, "Yep, the law is fairly clear at this level. My Facebook Lives are not a function of the city, and the page is clearly marked as a campaign asset. I know it hurts your business as you're paid to troll me, but I guess you'll have to figure that out on your own. Good luck." Paid to troll me is an interesting take. And sorry, the quote is over. I'm not getting paid to troll you. You regularly celebrate and emphasize the fact that the community and its citizens are your bosses, When your boss disagrees with you, you don't get to block them or shut them out. You may have legal authority to block me and others who disagree with you, but is it the right thing to do? Is it the brave thing to do? Is it the smart thing to do? And is it the ethical thing to do? For someone who constantly champions transparency and accountability and open, hard dialogue, it is dismaying, but sadly unsurprising to see this behavior. Look, I'm not here just because of a Facebook page. I'm here because I believe that dialogue and disagreement are part of moving our city forward. Civic engagement is a touchstone of quality of life. Wichita already suffers from woefully low engagement. Blocking conversation has a direct negative impact on Wichita's quality of life. I'm here because I believe you think divisive partisan politics are what our community needs. Our state motto can just be a grouping of pretty words, or it can be something that unites us as Kansans. We can achieve incredible things, but we have to do the difficult work to get there. That includes having hard, uncomfortable conversations, being collaborative, and working with rather than against. I'm here because Wichita needs more than you have offered us over the past 2 years. We need vision, leadership, and meaningful action to move our city forward. I hope I get unblocked from your Facebook page, sure. But more importantly, I hope that our next 18 months look vastly different than the first 30. As the elections approach, all of you are in the public spotlight. As citizens, we want transparency, ethics, and difficult conversations, not just when they make sense, but as the core of the way we work as a city. Thank you.
Todd, you've been unblocked from that page for days, if not weeks now, so I hope that gets to where you need to be. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Celeste Reset, Century 2 roof is peeling. Fix it.
Good morning. Celeste Reset, Wichita native and founder of Save Century 2, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, grassroots effort to get a vote on our unique historic public buildings. As we analyze city council decisions, our mission has changed. We discovered a lack of oversight inside City Hall, no internal audit staff, no compliance testing of CID tax rates, past due loans from wealthy developers, and transactions that can be mislabeled. Development deals are not transparent and extremely difficult to understand, so our mission has evolved into holding City Hall accountable. One thing is perfectly clear: Century 2 is being run down. On Earth Day, we planted flowers around Century 2. Volunteers found blue flakes on the ground, blue flakes like this one. I have passed out a baggie for each one of you. Keep this blue flake as a memento of your term on City Council. It is a piece of Century 2's roof. When you are driving along Kellogg, look at the blue dome and you will see white areas on the roof. Not blue, white. The roof has deteriorated for so long that it is peeling off. Visitors going to see The Lion King at Century 2 will see blue flakes in the flower beds, in the parking lot, and on the sidewalk. This is an embarrassment. The city spends millions on an overbuilt and overpromised new ball stadium, but won't take care of the Performing Arts and Convention Center. You have deferred working on Century 2's roof for at least 15 years. It was rated poor in the 2009 facility assessment. The 2009 CIP had $22 million earmarked to make improvements to Century 2. $7 million was earmarked for deferred maintenance. You should have done the work, but then we got a new city manager and the $22 million disappeared from the CIP. The roof was not fixed. And now years later, the roof is delaminating, peeling off. The blue lamination can no longer adhere to the advanced age of the roof. First of my 3 requests, fix Century 2's roof. Funds are available right now through the hotel guest tax and the transient guest tax. This tax was created through Charter Ordinance number 221 to take care of Century 2. Stop spending millions from the Tourism and Guest Fund to finance private hotels, to finance Visit Wichita, who already gets all of the T-bid, and to finance Ball Stadium development. Take care of Century 2. The Charter Ordinance says this is priority 1 and 2 of the hotel guest tax. So make it a priority. Fix the roof. Second, apply for historic tax credits to renovate and repair Century 2. Once you start the repair, you can add later phases to it. Your first phase should be to repair the roof. The second phase should be to upgrade the building to current ADA and fire codes. Just last week, legislators in Topeka increased historic tax credits to upgrade fire suppression in historic buildings. Did you know this? Take advantage of it. Add additional phases to take care of everything inside the building, like elevators, terrazzo flooring, electrical upgrades, soundproofing, and asbestos removal. There's a whole list of what qualifies for historic tax credits, and I would be glad to leave a copy with City Manager Layton or the City Clerk. Tons of things qualify inside Century 2 for repair. Historic tax credits can even cover consultants to oversee repairs, including architects, engineers, and acoustical consultants. But nothing you have done to this point is eligible because you haven't applied. Third, enforce your private management contracts. ASM Global took over management of Century 2 on January 1st, but there is no capital replacement schedule. This was required in the contract to identify pre-existing conditions of Century 2. My Cora was denied because this report is still only in draft form. All the professionals examining the facility, including GLMV architects who toured the building, aren't reimbursable. Once you apply for the tax credit and get it approved, it would be eligible to hire these people to determine repairs. Even the person who fills out the applications would be eligible for tax credits. If you can write a grant to fund a $4 million sky bridge between a hotel and an office building at the new Ball Stadium, you can write the application. Stop leaving money on the table, fix Century 2, and spend the money to repair the roof, and please do it now. I stand for questions.
Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Manager Layton, can you give us an update on what's going on when it comes to the maintenance of Century 2? I know that just recently we entered into a private agreement with a company, and also, I believe, more recently decided that C2 is going to stay secure where it's at for now. So can you kind of get us caught up, I guess, on where we're at today, but also that change from where we were a few years ago to right now?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we did enter into an agreement with ASM to manage and operate the facility. As part of that agreement, we worked with them to identify short-term capital needs and mid-term capital needs, and we've also hired a local architecture firm to help us prepare a long-term CIP, list of CIP recommendations. They are finishing up their work on those recommendations, including cost estimates for the repairs. I will apologize. There's a little communication problem in terms of the work that we've already done with ASM. I'm not quite sure why that hasn't been shared with Celeste, and it was my understanding and impression that we were going to share that list. It details the responsibilities of ASM, what they've agreed to as part of the short-term capital needs and what their work is, and it also shows what our city crews will be doing or what we'll contract for. So we'll make sure that Celeste gets that list. And again, I apologize. I thought that had already been shared with her.
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 13.
All right, has every member had a chance to review the consent agenda? And if so, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? If there's no discussion on the consent agenda, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept the consent agenda as it's presented. Is there a second?
Second. Motion
has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Board of Bids and Contracts and Airport Authority Board of Bids and Contracts dated May 2nd, 2022.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Josh Lauber, Department of Finance. The first item is for engineering the 2022 OP3 CIP street repairs and sidewalks for Don Barkley, DBA Barkley Construction, to be awarded in an amount within the engineer's estimate of $792,000. Last week there was a question on this item about clarification. I'd like to invite Gary Jansen to speak on this item.
Thank you, Josh. Mayor and council members, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. So this has been a long-standing process that we've utilized for many years. It's a provision that's in our specifications when the pavement preservation projects are bid. This is specific only to our outsourced pavement preservation program and those types of projects, and I'll explain why. This has happened before. We just haven't probably done the best job of explaining this, and it was no means by trying to hide anything from anybody, but actually this has happened before, but the way those numbers showed up last week, it became a little bit more evident, and I apologize that it did not dawn on me at the time what was going on. So every fall when the City Council approves the outsourced pavement preservation program for the next year, as you know, we have specific type of treatments. There's 7 different treatments that we apply within the program across the city to maximize our return on investment, depending on the street types, conditions, all those things. So we identify specific street sections. At that time, our best estimate for the quantity of work, the amount of work to be done, is what goes into that program. As we get to a point of bidding the project, we look at market conditions and what the current bids are in an effort to meet that commitment to try to get that same amount of work done on any one specific street section with whatever type of work that's being bid. We will adjust the quantities, the amount of work that we're going to bid to make sure we stay within that allotted budget, if that makes sense. So typically what happens in a situation like this, we adjusted the quantity down, expecting that we may get higher prices so that ultimately we stay within that same allotted budget for that street. What happens then, and why we have this specification in place, is if we get a more favorable bid, which we did here, the $711,000, the first thing that we do is the contractor is selected based on the lowest responsible base bid. So the $711,000, as you can see, was the lowest responsible base bid. We start there, and because that was within the engineer's estimate, which was actually higher than that, which was $873,000. So I don't want to confuse you here because that's even a different number. This provision allows us to adjust from that $711,000 bid anywhere up to the $873,000 estimate that was the original estimated cost when the program was first developed last fall. So what we did here, looking at the actual bid, the quantities we need to get done to honor the commitment for this specific project, we adjusted the contracted amount to $792,000 so we can meet the intent of the program. We do this on all of our pavement preservation projects. This happens almost on all of them, that the contract amount is awarded for higher than the bid amount. Say that again, maybe in a different way, real simply. It gives us the flexibility to be able to provide the treatments that we want to meet the intent of the original program in the fall. It's something we worked with purchasing on years ago. Law was a part of it too. It still allows us to meet the intent of our solicitation, our provisions for bidding projects, again, because of the basis of the lowest base bid. It's worked extremely well for us. Again, we've done this on other projects. We're going to make sure going forward that this language is clear. On the bid tab itself, which is a secondary document to this, it always talks about awarding for the engineer's estimate or some number within that. That just hasn't always shown up as clear on this document itself. So that may have been about as clear as mud. I'm happy to answer any questions if that was.
Further questions? Is there input from the public on this item? If not, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Go for it.
I apologize. Thank you, Gary. For airport, we have the airport rapid intervention vehicle. This will be deferred to May 16th, 2022. This is how to become a vendor with the city. These are our current open requests for proposals, and the recommendation would be to approve the bid awards as recommended. Thank you.
Right. With that, I don't have anyone on the board, so seems see none as far as discussion goes. So I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 78 votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
List of petitions for public improvements.
Mayor, council members, again, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. And I might just say one more comment real quick on that last item. If you do have any other questions, let me know. My intent was not to confuse you. I know it made sense to me when I was explaining that. It's something that's worked well for us, and it allows us the flexibility again to make our yearly program work the way that it should. So just let me know if you have any other questions. The next item I have is petitions for public improvements. We have one new development for your consideration today. The signatures on all petitions represent 100% of the improvement district, and all petitions are valid per Kansas statute. New petitions for Colt Meadows Edition Phases 1 and 2, which is in District 4, provide for water, sanitary sewer, stormwater drain, and paving improvements. Staff recommends City Council approve the new petitions and budgets, adopt the new resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? See none. Input from the public? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Further discussion on the item? If there is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the new petitions and budgets, adopt the new resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second? Second. Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. All members would cast the votes. Everyone. Having received 78 votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds, ICT 21 LLC.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for ICT 21 LLC. Just as a matter of background on the speculative industrial program, in December of 2017, the City Council approved the program, which requires a developer to build a minimum of 100,000 square feet with a minimum of 28 feet clear height, with a preference for tilt-up concrete over metal buildings. The developer must start construction within 120 days of City Council approval and complete the project within 15 months of City Council approval. The developer must use industrial revenue bonds to achieve a 95% abatement in the first 5 years and a 50% abatement in the second 5 years if the facility is at least 50% leased at that time. There is no abatement for the land. Currently, 6 projects have been approved under this policy. Wham Capital built 100,000 square feet at 35th Street North and Webb Road, which is fully leased. Jeff Lang's Iron Horse development at Seneca and MacArthur built 100,000 square feet, which is fully leased. Webb Industrial, which constructed 140,000 square feet at 40th Street North and Tobin, is fully leased to Amazon. Webb Industrial 2 at 40th and Tobin built 113,000 square feet, which is close to being fully leased. Millennia Productions built 128,000 square feet at 37th Street North and Tobin, which is fully leased. And ICT 21 last September was approved for a letter of intent and is currently under construction with 180,000 square feet and is experiencing good leasing activity. ICT 21 LLC is made up of partners Ron Cornejo, Marty Cornejo, Matthew Polzin, and Morgan Kuhn. They intend to build a second 180,000 square foot warehouse with a total investment of approximately $12.6 million. The facility would be built at the northwest corner of 21st Street North and I-135, and are currently requesting a letter of intent of approximately $12.6 million. This is all subject to a memorandum of understanding that was approved in September of last year, which defines the minimum square footage that needs to be built in this development and the timeframes within which that square footage is to be built. In this aerial, you can see I-135 a little bit right of center, coming from top to bottom, and 21st Street North a little bit above the bottom, running from left to right. The area outlined in red is the total ICT 21 development. In this site plan, you can see a building that has the red arrow pointing towards it. That is the first building that was approved last September by the City Council for a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds. That 180,000 square feet is under construction. The building under consideration today would be the 180,000 square feet north of that. This is an architectural rendering of what the facilities would look like. And this is an actual set of photos of what the facility looks like today. The top rendering is the front of the building, which faces 21st Street North, as it is under construction, and the building, the image on the bottom is the backside of the facility. As you can see, all of the panels of tilt-up concrete are in place today, so the next move would be to install the roof and go from there with whatever interior improvements might be required for tenants. The estimated value of 1 year of a 95% property tax abatement is approximately $304,000, with the city's share being approximately $78,400. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which shows an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.41 to 1, 1.19 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 2.13 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures. Morgan Kuhn, who is a partner in ICT 21 LLC, is here and can answer any questions specific to the project, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions for Morgan, please.
Good morning, Council. Morgan Kuhn, ICT 21.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about the tenants with the current building, and if you have prospects maybe for the second building, and just kind of what that is looking like.
Absolutely. So when in the beginning, it was somewhat slow. We had one RFP that we had sent out, and unfortunately went through a large part of that RFP. And then as the economy started to slow down, that particular entity pulled out. However, in the last month, we have had amazing run on tenants and prospects. So in the last month, we have sent out 3 formal RFPs. The first RFP that we sent out was for 180 to 200,000 square feet. That got us to thinking that maybe the one building wasn't enough, and we needed to start working on building 2 sooner than what we had originally anticipated. I think if everyone remembers, as part of the TIF, one of the milestones that we had to meet was the first 180,000 square foot had to have a certificate of occupancy. I believe it was by October of this year, and the second 180,000 square feet had to have a certificate of occupancy by, I believe it was December of 2023. So once we started to see that movement, then we came to the council to ask for the spec application for the second building. Since that first RFP was sent out, we've sent out 2 other formal RFPs. Those came from us directly through our broker. GWP has met with another manufacturer who is interested in 150 to 200,000 square feet. While we were having these discussions, that first inquiry that came to us for the 180 to 200,000 square feet came back to our broker and said, "We really like what we see. Do you have any room for additional additions for us if we were to accept and take your offer. So we showed them the remaining, and then they came back and they asked, well, would 400,000 square feet take place? Unfortunately, this was after I had already submitted this particular application. So we sent them back all that information. Subsequent to all of this, we've had 2 other inquiries within the last week for 150 to 250,000 square feet. So we're seeing quite a bit of activity now that the walls have finally stood. And I'm glad that I'm in the position that I am today with having this application in front of you so that we can get started on the construction for Building 2, because I firmly believe that being able to see the walls go up, being able to see an actual building really gets these individuals to start focusing on us as opposed to some of the other communities they're looking at. To my knowledge of the, I'm going to say 6 to 8 RFPs or inquiries that we've had in the last month, there are only 2 that I know of that have any type of a local presence. The rest of them are national entities with 0 local presence. So our hope is that we can land some of those and bring entities into the city that do not have a presence here already.
And when will you guys be complete with the first building?
June of this year, we will be complete with Building 1. If all goes well with Building 2 and we don't run into a lot of weather, we should be complete sometime early 2023. I'd like to say by the end of 2022, but with rain and stuff like that, it might push it to early 2023.
And my last question is, have you run into many problems with supplies?
So far, we've run into a few, but not a lot, honestly. We've done a really good job of shifting where we are getting supplies from if needed. There are some that are taking a little bit longer. I think now with Building 2 coming on board, we have a very good idea of what is going to take a little bit longer than some of the other supplies. So I think that we've got a handle on it. We're not going to see a problem with that.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Further questions? See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there further input from the public on this item? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I'll recognize Councilmember Ballard as this item falls into District 6.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take the staff's recommended action and close the public hearing, adopt the resolution of intent, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion passes. Madam Clerk.
Public exigency 42-inch Hess Yard pipe repairs.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. For the record, Don Henry, Public Works and Utilities. The item before you this morning is regarding the repairs of the Hess Yard piping and system under public exigency. A little bit of background. There are 3 finished water lines that feed treated water from the plant's chlorine contact basin to the Hess pump station. 2 of the lines are 42-inch cast iron pipe that was constructed as part of the original water treatment plant. These are the 2 lines at issue and the chlorine contact basin as well. One of the lines is an 84-inch reinforced concrete pipe that was constructed as part of the central plant inspection in 1950s in order to bring Cheney Reservoir online. Some background on how these leaks were discovered. Work is currently underway to test the isolation valves on the 3 finished water lines. That project's important because these valves have to be functional in order to do the correct isolation so that structures can be built to tie the new water treatment plant in. So beginning on March 23rd, 2 leaks were discovered in the south 42-inch finished water pipe. And the city manager approved public exigency to move forward with further exploration and investigation, and including any repair work that was needed. And this was in accordance with City Code Section 2.64020C. And in terms of further investigation, we were able to utilize specialized divers and video equipment that was already on site for the Hess valve treatment project. And as part of that work, 2 additional leaks were found for a total of 4 pipe leaks 3 of those were on the South 42, 1 was on a segment of the North 42, and in addition to that, 3 leaks were discovered in the chlorine contact basin itself during excavation. On the chlorine contact basin, 2 construction joints were found to be leaking, and then 1 seal around the South 42-inch finished water line was found to be leaking. Work continues and it's being performed with an abundance of caution. Due to the critical utility infrastructure that's in the area, this includes both city water infrastructure and electrical and gas. For example, the project was held up for several days so the gas company could relocate a 4-inch gas line that feeds the Hess pump station. Because of the nature of the work and the length of the project, a bypass was constructed in order to ensure adequate flows to meet demands during this project. So it was determined that the 4 pipe leaks were the result of workmanship performance at the time of original installation. The mode of failure that we saw is consistent with research that shows when these pipes are constructed, there can be issues with the joints and the way that those are formed by the workmen at the time. The 4 pipe leaks have been repaired. That work's complete. It's been pressure tested and the repairs are secure and ready to be returned to service. In fact, the North 42-inch line is back in service. The South 42 remains down so that work on the chlorine contact basin could be completed. The bypass is still in place for additional capacity if needed. 1 leaking joint in the chlorine contact basin has been repaired and work is underway to repair the 2 remaining leaks. We expect within 2 weeks that full service will be back to normal. In the meantime, conditions continue to be closely monitored and controlled. Customer service is not being impacted and no disruptions are expected. Water treatment has not been affected by this project or these leaks. Current demands continue to be met. One of the things that's working in our favor on this project is that unlike water mains that function under high pressure and pumping pressure, these large pipes function under gravity to transport the water, so the pressure is very low. So the risk is extremely minimal in terms of any type of a sudden catastrophic failure or additional damage with these kind of leaks. Therefore, condition assessments will be performed on remaining Hess yard pipes, those sections that we weren't able to see in the future as part of a separate project. Plans are being developed to optimize the timing of that work, and we're looking, there's going to be potential win-wins at the time that we're doing the Northwest Water Facility tie-ins to complete that work. And if other leaks are discovered, they will be addressed in the future as they are found. The estimated total budget for the bypass pumping, the pipe, and basin repairs and necessary materials is $1.6 million. This estimate exceeds the approved maximum for on-call services on a value per project basis. Funding is available in the approved capital improvement program, and the full cost of the project has been accounted for and will not impact rates. Therefore, it's recommended that City Council affirm the City Manager's public exigency approval for Hess Yard piping system repairs, approve the contract and total budget in the amount of $1.6 million, adopt the resolutions and authorize the necessary signatures, and please keep in mind that per Charter Ordinance number 211, this item does require a 2/3 majority vote. And I will stand for any questions that you have at this time.
Are there questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? Cyril, this is input on the 42-inch Hess yard pipe repairs.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
I was listening.
Just want to make sure that we're staying on topic.
I hear good.
Some responses the
I
other
might
day.
be 64, but I hear good.
Oh, I get it. But I got some responses the other day about keeping people on the item, so I just wanted to remind you as a courtesy.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. I would like to know if the taxpayer's going to pay for this, because the water department made several things go wrong. We ended up buying bottled water, and we're not getting reimbursed for it. And I just hope and pray that the taxpayers are not going to pay for this. Well, our waters, all the utilities have gone up, and we are tired of paying. We're not the bank. We don't get money from you all. So the businesses need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. I've talked to people. They're saying, we don't want to pay no more. Now, all I want to ask you is if the taxpayers are going to pay for this. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Manager, can you respond to where the funding's coming for the repairs of this pipe?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The funding for this comes from our water users.
And
Can you speak up, please?
Funding for these repairs is already included in our budget for the water department, and it comes from water user fees.
thank you.
Thank you.
Further input? All right, so if there's no further input, we'll bring discussion back to the bench to further discussion about this item. If there's no further discussion, then I'll go ahead and recognize Councilmember Ballard as this item resides in District 6.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to take the staff's recommended action, affirm the city manager's public exigency approval for 42-inch Hess yard pipe repairs, approve the contract, adopt the resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Design concept funding and supplemental design agreement number 1 for improvements to 21st Street North from I-135 to Mosley.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor and Council Members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for approval of the design concept for improvements to 21st Street North from I-135 to Mosley, as well as some supplemental information supporting the project. Some quick history. In July of 2021, the City Council approved an agreement with MKC Engineering to develop design concepts for improvements to 21st Street North. And on April 4th of this year, the District 6 Advisory Board unanimously approved the design concept, including both phases, which I'll talk about more in just a moment. To just give you an overview of where we're at here, I-135 is to the right side of the screen, Broadway to the left. The 2 different shades, colors you see here, red is a phase 1 project, blue would be a phase 2, which again I'll talk about more in just a moment. The ICT 21 development is on the north side, adjacent to the red phase that you see, and you've already heard some about that today. The bridge that's there over the Chisholm Creek kind of serves as a natural barrier, and the reason why we're looking at phasing here is because the west portion of this in blue requires some right-of-way acquisition that was going to take some time in an effort to try to get the improvements done on 21st Street, especially to support the progress of the ICT 21 development. That's why we plan to proceed that way with 2 different phases. Looking to the west, you can see here off to the right is the ICT 21, the first spec warehouse that was discussed this morning that Tim talked about. Council just approved moving forward with the second spec warehouse. There's also a travel plaza planned for the area. So in the near future, there'll be a significant increase in traffic, especially trucks. Therefore, we want to get moving, especially on this phase 1 improvements. Generally, 21st Street is 4 lanes, so primarily looking at adding turn lanes where those make sense. Another picture of 21st Street looking to the west, and then this is actually looking back to the east at the Mosley intersection, which would be the terminus of the west end of the project. Sorry, I went through that a little bit too fast. Yeah, thank you. Now I'll go back. Looking at the limits of phase 1, again, the Chisholm Creek Bridge is on the west. The improvements at 135 are on the east. So we'd be looking to add left and right turn lanes at the intersection. This intersection does not currently meet warrants for traffic signal, but we will provide the infrastructure to make installing a traffic signal in the future more readily available and efficient. Both phases of the project will add 6-foot sidewalk throughout the corridor. The first phase of construction estimated to begin by early 2023 and be completed by next summer. We're hoping to beat that and start late this year, again, to try to help support the development that's happening with ICT 21. Looking at the second phase, going from the west side of the bridge to the Mosley intersection, you can see that we're proposing to realign Mosley, which does impact the property on the immediate southeast corner of 21st and Mosley. Several things that we're doing here to help make improvements, especially from a safety perspective, is moving the intersection further away from the railroad to the west. That allows more space, better sight angles for the intersection and for those people on 21st Street. You see the westbound left turn lane to the right of the screen. Right now, there's a lot of train traffic in this area. There's several tracks where trains will stop at times and back traffic up to the east. What happens is when people are queued back in the inside lane of the westbound 21st Street, they'll usually hop to the other side of 21st Street, go west to Mosley, and make that turn to the south, which is not safe. By adding the extended left turn lane, it allows that same movement to be done without getting on the wrong side of the road. Because if you've got northbound traffic on Mosley trying to go east on 21st, then you have the potential for conflicting traffic. So this will add some safety improvements all the way around. Design services fee to date is $144,000. Cost of supplemental design agreement to finish the design for both phases is $416,000, bringing the total design fee to just under $560,000. The existing budget was approved by the City Council in July of 2021. Staff recommends initiating the remaining budget of just over $3.8 million in the CIP at this time for right-of-way acquisition and for construction of the first phase. That local sales tax funding will bring the total budget to $4 million. It's possible that that won't be enough funding to finish phase 2. We have additional programming. We have additional funding recommended for programming in the proposed CIP. There are some issues in this area with contaminated soil that we know from working in the past when that bridge was replaced on the old Derby refinery site. That adds some unknown costs that we try to figure in, but we won't know until we get to the point of actually building the project to know the extent of that. Plus, the additional right-of-way acquisition probably puts us at a point where we originally were not within our original estimate for the budget. We know we can get phase 1 built. That's going to support the development. And then we'll have to look and see what the priorities are within the CIP that's recommended to the City Council for final approval. One thing I didn't mention real quick is on the phase 2, pending how that right-of-way acquisition goes. I mentioned that phase 1, we plan to construct in the first half of 2023. We would hope to start phase 2 construction late in 2023 and finish by the summer of 2024, just so you know what that timing looks like. With that, staff recommends City Council approve the design concept and supplemental design agreement number 1, adopt the resolution, authorize the necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Bluebow.
Thank you, Mayor. Gary, I've got some feedback that's kind of a dangerous intersection there on phase 2. Is there any way to accelerate that, or is that pretty much as good as we can do?
What's going to really drive that is the right-of-way acquisition. Staff has talked to that property owner already, and it sounds like we're hoping that they're in a reasonable position that can move forward fairly quick. That's really what's going to drive that schedule. Also, the timing of the additional funding, if the CIP includes the additional funding, we hope that it does. I think we can expedite that. We hope so. We're tracking right now to design the first phase and get that out the door. That doesn't mean that we can't. We're not purposely waiting on that phase 2. We're just estimating the timing based on that right-of-way acquisition. So we'll do everything we can to get that going.
Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to the slide that has like the map on it? I know we've had a lot of issues with railroad and getting all of that. Is there going to be any impact with rail or anything like that?
We're staying away from the rail crossing to the west of Mosley.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll show you something different here. This shows both railroads here. If you look on the west side, UP Railroad, we're actually staying away from that, not making any changes there. The crossing right in the middle of the BNSF, we'll have to make upgrades to that crossing, working with the railroad. I'm not exactly sure which part you're elaborating about. I know one of the biggest concerns up here is with rail traffic stopping. There's not much we can do with this project to accommodate that. I will tell you, as an aside, staff is working with the railroads. It's a little bit of a slow process to try to find ways First off, to make sure they understand the impact that they're having with the length of stoppage that they're having across 21st Street. The last time we approached them about this, I kind of gathered that they did not realize just the extent and the number of times that was happening. So we're working with them to make sure they're aware. We actually have some help from some local businesses owners who've got video and have got some data showing when that's happened. We're working with them to see if there's something can be done with their infrastructure outside the 21st Street corridor to where they can build trains elsewhere, to where they can break trains up during certain times of the day. I hope to make progress on that in the next 6 months. It's been a little bit slow, but we're doing what we can.
I appreciate it. That's a big struggle right there, and adding more construction will be helpful, but the interim won't be any fun. And then I appreciate you addressing the business right there on the corner. So I assume that will be taken out completely.
The plan right now is that business would no longer be there, correct?
Okay. Do you know if they're going to relocate?
The indication that we've heard so far, and I don't want to speak for the
Sure.
owner, just giving you information so far, is it sounds like he was considering retiring anyway, so it might be pretty decent timing. And I don't think we heard necessarily that the business would relocate, but there's still a long ways to go on that.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question about the railroads. I know this isn't on topic, but is it 5 minutes, the federal regulations that the trains can actually stop before they're violating the national guidelines?
It was at one time. I can't quote exactly for you that number. I've got some staff who knows that better than I do. The challenge has been enforcement. What we've done over time, we have staff that works closely with the railroads. We do everything we can to stay in contact with them. One of the things that we've done is put up signage at these crossings so that there's direct numbers for people who are stopped that can call, because we've found that really is most impactful. City calling the railroads helps. I think the railroads hearing from people who are waiting on trains also helps. It needs to be a collective effort. Our experience is local ordinance doesn't mean anything. State level really doesn't mean anything either. And the federal level ordinance for the length of time that a train can stop, or even the overall length of a train, is very hard to enforce. We've worked with the Federal Rail Authority and some of the direct railroads, and it's a real challenge across the country to try to impact what the railroads do. I think they've done what they've done for so long, nobody exactly knows how to approach it anymore. But we're doing what we can. As I mentioned to Councilmember Ballard, it's something we haven't given up on, and we're going to continue to pursue that. But we have found that it's really hard to enforce, even what is in the federal code, because it's hard to know where to go to get anybody to even listen about that.
Okay, yeah. Just as continue to push the issue along. This is a big issue in my district as well, I'm sure you know, as it is up north there. So whatever we can do to get those railroad cars moving as soon as possible, because sometimes they're sitting there for 20 minutes or so, I have no idea what they're doing in that time, but I appreciate it.
I'm not sure that they even know what they're doing at times. That's one of the challenges, but I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. You actually answered my other question about the business, but since you're doing bike path improvements, is there a way to artistically connect that with Nomar, kind of like we did on Broadway, either in the brick or any type of cultural art?
So what this project will include is a 6-foot sidewalk on both sides.
Or a sidewalk.
And I want to make sure I understood what you're talking about is maybe if we were looking at some artistic element here that would help us connect to what's in Nomar, right? Sorry, I just want to make sure I heard that right. We hadn't gotten that far yet, but sure, I think that's something we could try to look at. I don't think we had necessarily had that thought with this area being a little bit more industrial, but I appreciate the comment, and we'll take a look at that, sure.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? Again, this is about design concept funding and supplemental design agreement number 1 for improvements on 21st Street North from I-135 to Mosley.
Yeah, I know where it's at. My name is Sybil Strum. I reside at 326 North Walnut, the Delano area. Big deal. Now you say the sales tax is going to go up, right?
No.
No?
We're
Good.
not increasing sales tax.
Because the taxpayers are not willing to pay for this. But I do believe in safety. I do, because I used to be a safety patrol guard at Franklin Elementary from 1984 to 2007. We need more rails, you know, like the X. I don't know, what is that called, the X one? Yeah, the guardrails. Yeah, we need more of those because we have been down those areas. And some reason, the vehicles think they could beat the train, and they can't. Because the train will either hit them or something else. We need guardrails, more guardrails. Yes, I'm all for that. I'm just trying to get to the point that we don't let us pay no more taxes for everything. You make us pay for businesses to come in. You make us pay for businesses to go out. We need the money to pay for our bills and pay for our children's college and all that stuff. We want a vacation too. We are not the bank. Stop getting the money from us or pay it back. Thank you.
Further public input on this particular item? Welcome. Please state your name and address if you're comfortable with that, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Well, my name's Clint Weber. I work at 2155 North Mosley. So that's the business that resides on either side of North Mosley there in 21st. I just have, my main concerns are around impeding our operation through this project, and I just didn't know if there was any thoughts around, number one, rail. We do have a rail spur there that comes, it's on this map here, it's marked BNSF Railroad. Behind our property there to the east. That is our rail spur. There's several tanks that we've got out back there, and that's where our rail comes in. If this project would impede the ability to deliver or send rail cars. And then two, directly to the west of that Mosley, there's truck scales. And we have to get across from those truck scales over to the plant itself, which is directly to the east of that project. So I didn't know if there was thoughts around, currently we have a driveway that looks like it will be, by these drawings, it looks like it'll be removed, I guess, to the north side of those scales. Currently, we have to utilize that to turn around large trucks, semis, to get in and off those scales. One way in, one way out is going to be fairly difficult. It's maybe short-term doable, but I didn't know what the thoughts around temporary, driveways and that sort of thing were, if they had thoughts around that or plans as of yet.
So these are really, really good feedback. We want to obviously have the least disruption to industry as we improve this area. Can we get you to perhaps meet with Gary off, when a meeting is in session, and also your council member is Councilmember Ballard, so loop her in as well, and maybe there's a way that we can ensure that has the least impact on on industry in that area.
Yeah,
So if you wouldn't mind meeting,
Outstanding.
that'd be great.
All
Thank you,
right.
sir, for being here.
Appreciate it.
Of course. More public input. See none. All right, we're going to bring discussion back to the bench. The further discussion on this item. Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to tell the gentleman that just came to speak, thank you for the feedback and input. Certainly, your business is important to us too, so that you can continue your operations. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and speak, and Gary and I will get with you afterwards. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, then we'll have Councilmember Ballard retain the floor for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to take the staff's recommended action, approve the design concept and supplemental design agreement number 1, adopt the resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Fleet heavy equipment replacement.
Welcome.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Ben Nelson, Public Works and Utilities. Today, we're seeking initiation of $3.5 million that is budgeted in the Capital Improvement Program, the CIP. It uses general obligation bonds to pay for replacement of aging heavy equipment and heavy vehicles. Our fleet division in our department is responsible for maintenance, repair, and replacement of 7 different type of asset classes. 2 of those are heavy equipment and heavy vehicles. These are long-lasting vehicles that are quite expensive. They're usually used in our operating divisions and are really kind of the frontline equipment that we use for a variety of tasks. And this recurring annual CIP budget that we have goes to replace those heavy equipment and heavy vehicle assets in use in the non-enterprise funds. So generally the equipment that we're replacing each year with these funds are in use by our street maintenance division in Public Works. We also have forestry and park maintenance equipment primarily that is replaced every year. With this year's funding, we're on schedule to replace around 21 assets that average about $170,000 per asset. Several dump trucks, Bobcat and excavator, a Packer truck that I believe is used for trash collection in city parks, and some other equipment is up for replacement this year. It's part of a 10-year total investment of about $39 million that is budgeted in the CIP, and because it's budgeted in the CIP, this is well within what we've planned for to use existing tax dollars on, so this has no impact on the mill levy. Before I conclude, I do want to talk through just a little bit of a 2-step process we use for how to decide what equipment gets replaced. Every year we use what we call our DST, our Decision Support Tool, which is an analytics model that uses more than 100,000 work orders of history that we have working with these different assets. And from that, we run it through this analytics model that helps us extrapolate the longest amount of time we can go without replacement while keeping the total cost of ownership, the maintenance and repair side, as low as possible, but keeping the downtime, the time that the equipment is out of service, keeping that to a minimum. So we have a replacement interval for each of these asset classes. For these asset classes, it's 13 years. That helps us set the budget when we work through the CIP process every year, helps give us a list of items that are up for replacement. And then we go to a second step, which is more granular, where we use a scorecard to assess the condition of each of these assets based on the maintenance, repair, downtime, and some other factors specific to each asset, so that we know that we're replacing the ones at the greatest need. And that's a scorecard that's an industry standard best practice through the American Public Works Association. So this is how we'd be using the annual funding this year, using that 2-step process to make sure we're replacing the right equipment. With that, our recommendation is to approve the project, adopt the bonding resolution, authorize the necessary signatures. That concludes
Questions
the
for
presentation.
staff? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Ben, could you talk a little bit about what we do with the retiring inventory?
Yes, twice a year we have an equipment auction. Usually ranges from about 100 to 150 pieces of equipment where we sell it to the highest bidder. We usually have 2 open houses on each of these equipment auctions. And then we take the proceeds from those sales and put them back into replacement, to defraying some of the cost of replacing those fleet assets. In general, it brings in about $400,000, I believe, every year through that auction process. You're welcome. And the next auction is scheduled May 10th, and it's advertised at purplewave.com.
Further questions for staff? See none, thank you. Input from the public on this item? See none, thank you. Further discussion from the bench? See none. If there is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to place the ordinance on first read and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance amending sections 3.49.20, 3.49.40, 3.49.130, and 3.49.140, and creating section 3.49150 of the Code of the City of Wichita, Kansas, pertaining to emergency record services.
Madam Clerk, I apologize. I actually made the wrong motion. Now that you just read that section, I actually read the motion for that section. So I'm going to ask for us to go back to the previous section so I can make the proper motion for the fleet heavy equipment replacement instead of just kind of switching the motions because I think that would mess us up. So if there's no objection, then for item 4 on the agenda, fleet heavy equipment replacement, I make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the project, adopt the bonding resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. I do apologize. It's always embarrassing when that happens, but thank you. I'm glad for indulging, and it's important that we correct that. Now on to item 5. Chair recognizes staff.
All right. Hey, good morning. I'm Captain Ronald Hunt with the Wichita Police Department. I'm here to bring forth the amendments to Chapter 349 in regards to the Emergency Record Service. The Emergency Record Services are provided by wreckers licensed pursuant to the city ordinance. These wreckers participate in a record rotation list. Wreckers are currently called by Spider as needed to respond to accident locations at the request of law enforcement. The Wichita Police Department utilizes the record rotation list to respond to timely accident scenes. In addition to the record rotation list, the city has a contact with several tow companies to provide towing services for vehicles that are impounded by the Wichita Police Department. The Wichita Police Department is requesting amendments to city ordinances to ensure consistency of services provided by the record service with the terms negotiated in the impound contract. For the analysis, they revise the terms of the licenses to be for 1 year, ending on May 31st. This change would make the licensing period consistent with the terms of WPD's impound contract for the record service. Reduce the time that record lots must be open for the release of motor vehicles. Emergency wreckers would be required to have an office open Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., and on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the release of vehicles. Lots would still be required to be open 365 days a year to receive towed or impounded vehicles. They would provide emergency record services. The provided emergency record services may be closed for the release of vehicles on Sundays, New Year's, Memorial, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Storage fees may not be charged for those days. The office is closed if the vehicle is claimed within 3 business days of the holiday or Sunday that they are closed. Requires licenses to maintain adequate records regarding the fees charged and disposition of vehicles. The chief of police or his or her designee is authorized to inspect such records. Since 2012, fees have been established by licenses or licensees. Prior to that, maximum fees were set forth by city ordinance. The current fees for licensees for 2021 is attached. Many of the scheduled fees are 30 to 40% higher than the amounts charged for the same services to the police department for impound tows. To assist consumers and establish consistency in fees, administrative fees are capped at the amount negotiated by the record companies for impounding of WPD or vehicles for the WPD. There is no financial consideration. The ordinance amendments have been drafted and approved as to the form by the law department. Recommended action is to place the ordinance on the first reading and authorize all necessary signatures.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have an idea of the number of vehicles that are reclaimed late Saturday or Sunday, like 5% maybe, just a general ballpark?
You know, I don't. With the 9 record services that are in, I don't have an exact number as to how many are claimed on Sundays. And I would probably have to contact each one of the record services to get that information for you, sir.
Okay, and most of it'll still be up to the businesses whether or not they're open on those days. So some of them you'll still be able to come and get your cars on late Saturday or Sunday?
I think by the consensus, most, if not all, wanted to be off on those days. That's why they asked for this negotiation to be part of it. And then I think, you know, at least from the police department's position, that's why we were at least wanting to give at least 3 days after a Sunday or holiday that, you know, the citizen would not be charged a fee for the days that they are closed. So to give them time to get down there maybe the next day or whatever to get it picked up and not be charged for the day that they couldn't pick it up.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion or questions of staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Further discussion on this item? Please approach when we call for input from the public, please stand up and make your way forward so that I'm aware that there are people from the public who would like to give their input, so.
I think it's a good idea. My name is Sybil Strum. I reside at 326 North Walnut. I think that's a good idea because I know Bud. I know him. He knows my kids. He knows me. He knows my grandkids. They need to keep this to where he said, it's a great idea. Let's keep it. Okay.
Further input from the public? See none, bring discussion back to the bench. Further discussion on this item? If there's no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the recommended police impound towing contract and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote. Did Councilmember Fry jump on the board?
Yeah, I think you're on the wrong motion again. You should be on, we're just doing the ordinance, not the contract.
Thank you for that catch. My notes, I guess I'm just off today. I apologize. Thank you again for that catch. So if we could go ahead and I will retract my motion if it's okay with the Vice Mayor who seconded it. Absolutely. So my motion has been retracted. I will ask to make a new motion to place the ordinance on first read and authorize all necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. We'll continue with the roll open, and we will cast our votes. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. I'm going to try to get thrown off for this next one. Next item, or excuse me, Madam Clerk.
Police impound towing contracts.
All right, so again, Captain Ronald Hunt. Department for wrecked vehicles at accident scenes. A towing rotation list has been established. Licensed record companies are called sequentially whenever an emergency tow or impound tow is necessary. Fees for emergency tows are established by the record companies at the time of the annual one-year licensing period. The Wichita Police Department impound abandoned vehicles as well as vehicles when the driver is arrested. A contract exists with the record companies for these two tows, and fees for impounded vehicles are set for the existing contract. In 2021, there were 3,736 emergency tows directed by citizens and 1,732 impounded tows directed by WPD staff. Amendments to the emergency record ordinance to bring them into compliance with certain operating terms agreed to the proposed contracts will be brought before the council in a separate agenda. On December 22nd, 2021, a request for proposal, RFP, was sent out for the purpose of obtaining towing, storage, and online auction services to handle all police-initiated impounds. There were two proposals that were received for this RFP. One proposal represented 8 of the record companies, and the other proposal represented 1. After staff review and analysis, both proposal submittals, the staff screening and selecting committee negotiated with all 9 towing companies. The SSSC deemed that all 9 of the towing firms met the stated evaluation criteria. The terms of the proposed contracts include the following changes from the previous impound towing contracts. So again, to reduce the time that the record company office must be open for the release of motor vehicles back to their owners, the change the opening of the office hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. From 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. To 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. So the 7 to 7 was the old way. So it will be 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. And their Saturday office hours from 8 a.m. to 2, and from 8 a.m. to 2 to 9 a.m. to 1 on Saturdays. The record contractor office will be closed 6 major holidays: New Year's, Memorial, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and Sundays. No storage fees will be assessed to citizens while record contractor lots office if the citizen picks up their vehicle within 3 business days following a holiday or Sunday. Light duty towing hook rollback fees increased from $105 to $120. Overturned rollover fees increased from $55 to $65. Dolly service fees will increase from $43 to $65. Winching fee, $25 per every 15 minutes to $30 every 15 minutes. Waiting times will increase from $15 every 15 minutes to $20 every 15 minutes. Storage fees increased from $30 per day to $35. Tarp fees increased from $20 to $25. Lot fees increased from $20 to $30. That's per day. Heavy duty towing increased from $250 per hour to $300 per hour. And title verification fees will increase from $20 to $50. Towing to a police facility increased from $100 maximum to $140 maximum per vehicle that are upright on 4 wheels, and other tow fees only if required by the charged as per Exhibit C. Record service companies will remit $125 for each vehicle auctioned only after the towing companies collect their $120 and the identified other towing fees per auctioned vehicle. A 4% increase annually was added to the contract that will be increased on each of the 4 renewal periods on specific identified towing fees. Each record company is identifying that the city, for any liability associated with the improper sale of the vehicle or the failure to provide proper notification of the sale to the legal owner of the vehicle, and approve the contract amendment with the new increased fees for impounding to be in effect from May 3rd, 2022 through May 31st, 2022. At each of the 4 annual renewal periods, staff may extend the contract terms to any licensed record company that is appropriately licensed and agrees to the bounds of the new contract renewal. The amount increased by the city for the impound auction vehicles will be estimated about $75,000 annually, assuming about 630 vehicles will be auctioned. In addition, their $30 administrative fee is expected to generate about $30,000. The revenue that we do bring in is expected to offset police department costs of administering the provisions of the city code pertaining to impound towing, as well as other regulatory and contractual provisions. Legal considerations. The proposed contracts have been reviewed and approved as to form by the law department. Recommendations for the approval of the police impound towing contract and authorize all necessary signatures. And I'll stand for any questions again.
All right, we'll start off with Vice Mayor Tuttle.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for all the work on this. I've heard that it was a labor of love, so thank you for everything you've done. I have 2 questions. Why are the hours being diminished? It was going from 7 to 7 to 7:30 to 6, and then on the weekends we're losing a couple hours too. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so when we were in negotiations with them, they kind of, I think, expressed that they didn't have a lot of business from that last hour of the day, and so they were open for 12 hours, 7 days a week initially. So this will allow them to at least get off a half hour earlier. We were concerned that, people working up till 5 o'clock, this would at least give them the chance or opportunity about an hour and a half to still make it down there to get their vehicle. And again, I think some of the businesses, they really didn't have a lot of release on Sundays. So they were paying their staff just to basically be on site. So being closed on Sundays kind of has allowed them to not pay staff, just to sit there.
Okay, thank you. I was just thinking about even the earlier hour if people had to get there before they get to work, but thank you. Could you go back to slide 86? I'm sure it makes sense to everyone, and I'm just not understanding it. But, so we're going to approve the contract amendment with the new increased fees for impounding May 3rd, 22 through May 31st, 2022?
Yeah, I think it should probably be May 31st of 2023. It's a 1-year contract, so just a mistype.
Yeah, and it was in the green sheet too, so that was my question, because I thought, oh my gosh, we're doing this for less than a month. Okay, so it should be through 2023.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you. I think the current is a 1 month, and then the new term starts June 1st, 22 for a 1-year contract. And that's what the renewal means. That's what I read the contract says. Correct? I see legal shaking.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the term right now.
Okay. So my question is, the prior council action on the ordinance was a first reading, which means it's not fully adopted until next week. With this being effective today, does that affect the previous action that we took on the ordinance passing? Should this take effect next week after we have the second reading?
Councilmember Sharon Dick-Graff, who worked on these both, is here. I'm going to ask her to come forward to talk about that.
Sharon Dick Graff Law Department, you are correct that because there wasn't an emergency declaration that the ordinance will not go into effect until next week. So the contract could go into effect with their pricing. The hours are not going to be able to be changed, however, excuse me, until the ordinance is in effect.
Okay. So take advantage of the lower rates this week.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just a technical question because of an issue we had last year, and I can't remember if you were involved. So if a person is arrested, their vehicle is towed and impounded, and that person, for whatever reason, has to be in jail past the 3-day period we're talking about, they're charged for getting their vehicle out. But if they are found not guilty in whatever it is, who pays?
I think the way that this is written, you know, the citizen is given 3 days. If they're not able to get it in 3 days, then the fines would be assessed to, you know, the owner to pick up that vehicle for whatever days that they are closed, sir.
Councilmember, I think Sharon Dick Graff should address the legal piece of that.
The underlying charge is not going to affect the validity of the impound. So what happens a year, 2 years later, if the individual reclaimed their vehicle and paid those fees, there isn't going to be any kind of waiver or discounting of those fees, if that was the question as I understand it.
Yeah, it is because how the justice system is, poor people tend to get screwed over. So if they can't afford to get bail or bond to get out past the 3 days, and then there's these additional costs now per day of storing a vehicle. So let's say it takes them 10 to 15 days to get out of jail, and their vehicle is racking up these costs, and now they can't get their vehicle because they haven't been working or they lost their job. It just kind of seems to stack up on them. And I don't know if there's anything to do about it. It doesn't happen all the time, but when people fall through those cracks, this type of thing really hurts them.
Because this is a contract with the wrecking companies, and we are agreeing that the set amount of storage fees is the $35, there's not going to be a lot that either, frankly, the city could do or the citizen could do, because we are agreeing as part of this contract that those are the applicable fees that they can charge. So, you know, could we ask that they waive those fees? That would be something that would need to be negotiated.
Okay.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm playing the noob card here. Does the city only get $30 administrative fee per tow? Is that what I'm reading here?
I think that's, yes, we get $30 administrative fee.
And is that consistent with the cost previously, or has that gone up as well?
That's the that's the same.
Okay, I'm just a little concerned, kind of piggybacking off of what Councilmember Johnson had said about just the rise in all the fees here. You know, a lot of times it just makes it harder for somebody who maybe made a mistake or something to get back on their feet. So I do have a concern about the rising cost here and just the fees overall. So I just want to make that point and make sure that we're not doing anything on our side to contribute to that. So thank you.
Further questions? Input from the public.
My name is Lee McLeod, and I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association at Benjamin Hills, Pleasant Valley. I wasn't aware of this issue, and I hadn't come here planning to speak on it, but it does relate to what I will speak to you with on the next agenda item. It seems that this is very harsh to increase for the benefit of business owners, those people that are having already complex issues in their lives. They may be homeless, they've had a wreck, they've got crises, they may not have the maximum insurance if they have any car insurance, and they're going to have to deal with legal fees if they've been in car accidents or just their car plain broke down on the side of the road. So basically, what we've been trying to do as a city to help the homeless and potentially homeless in this city, this is just one more thing on top of everything else that could complicate their lives. I know you can't, that the police have to, and everybody has to increase their fees, but it seemed like it was a little more than the reasonable inflation fee. Some of these things were rising. So just a comment, because I know you are not solving the homeless problem.
Okay, Councilmember Ballard on the board, but we will continue with public discussion, and then we'll tag in Councilmember Ballard. So my apologies, Councilmember.
My name is Sybil Drum. I reside at 326 North Walnut. I know Jack Kellogg. We went to school together in North Heights, 1976. But let's get to the point. She's right. The fees are going up. There are people that are homeless. There are people that are low income. And some of the people have been in jail. And sometimes they can't pay the bail. Let's try to give the people a chance to get their vehicles out and everything. Yes, I know the towing trucks do a lot of work. Like I said, I know Bud. I know his son. I know them all. I know Millers. I know the towing people. Not because I have a vehicle. I just know them by the way they have responded to me and my family. We need to lower it down because some of these people don't have the money. And yes, she's right. I have helped the homeless. I've been homeless myself. And I've had my own organization. I never asked you guys for money. I think we should kind of get together and respond to not make it so excessive that the person can't get their vehicle or whatever out. Thank you.
Further input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. The struggle that I have with this is I understand increasing rates. I think that's a common theme that we're all seeing with everything, but I think the part that really bothers me on top of that is that we're reducing the hours. We're increasing the fee and reducing the hours. So that's just a comment that I wanted to make. I'm kind of struggling with that piece.
Mr. Manager, are these fees are going directly to folks the increase is going directly to the folks who need to pay to get their vehicles back? Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
Councilmember Blubaugh.
Thank you, Mayor. Did we have anybody from council setting in on during the negotiation or anything? I did it, not that I want to do it again. I did it years ago, and I know how difficult it is, but it just seems like there's a lot of council issues here.
We did not.
I'm not asking to be.
I think because of feedback we got last time, but yeah.
Is there further discussion? I do feel conflicted voting for this with the intention that it will actually be passed down towards this money, this increase to people who really likely or least likely to pay. I'm not sure if there's a opportunity to try to negotiate these differently, or if there's further discussion on having a council member sit in on that. At this point, though, when I have questions, I default my vote to usually no. So I just wanted to continue the conversation see if I can be moved on this. Councilmember Ballard.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just say that maybe in the future, this would be a good opportunity for council members to sit in on, just because we're all going to hear about whatever the issues might be. So just bringing our perspective might be helpful in the future.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Maybe that could be like new council member rotation.
I'll do it. It's fine.
Is there an opportunity to maneuver around this, get a council member on, and perhaps, and not just, I'm not sure how the vote would turn out if we just go forward with it. Could we, is there other opportunities that we could?
Yeah, Mayor, good question. So we were involved in protracted negotiations on this contract and frankly reached impasse at one point, and it was going to come to the bench in what would have been a less than pleasant discussion. I think it wouldn't hurt if the council wanted to pause and have representation, at least in a meeting with the representatives of the tow companies. You can hear their business case, because that's really what this came down to. If I remember correctly, I believe that their suggested fees were maybe even higher than what we have brought forward. So this was a compromise in terms of trying to recognize what you're talking about, but also recognizing their business needs. I don't have a problem in terms of holding off on this and allowing a council member or whoever you want to represent the council to sit down in the room with the staff and with the tow representatives.
And that might even if the prices don't change, at least the council member during discussion can let us in on some of those conversations as well, so we can have a more thorough understanding of this. Councilmember Johnson, is this something you might be interested in sitting on?
You know, I think because Councilmember Bluebaugh was involved before, that he's got a great knowledge. And
So technically, I'm not the newest council member. We've got two. Paper, rock, scissors.
Well, then, so why don't we, and I'll take suggestions maybe for a motion on this, because I don't want to table it, because then we have to have action at the bench to bring it back up. Can we send it back to staff for negotiation? I don't know if that's a proper motion here. In the legislature, you can send it back to committee, so I'm not sure what a variation of that would be, but it means that it goes on back to the administration on their plate, and they can bring it back when they want. It wouldn't take an action of the council to bring it back at that point. So perhaps if legal or if the manager has any suggestions on the best way to do that. We also have Vice Mayor who just got on the board, so maybe she can help me out with this. So Vice Mayor Tuttle.
I don't have any way to help you craft that. I just wanted to ask, are we going, like the contracts that we have, are we going to have a lapse? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. And I think if we brought this back on the 17th, we would be okay, right? Because aren't they extended through the 31st? Right, we have until the end of the month. So if the council wanted to sit down, have a representative, sit down with staff and the tow companies, we could do that, and you could then schedule this for coming back to you for consideration on the 17th.
Okay, so yeah, I'll then make the motion to take item 6, police impound towing contracts, and to remove it from this agenda and put it on the agenda for the council meeting on this May 17th.
I will second that.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open roll. Members cast their vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. If there is a council member who would like to be the representative of the council on that, please come and talk to us afterwards, and we can make sure we get the right person on, so long as that person isn't Bluebaugh, who has served his time. Madam Clerk.
2022-2023 fourth program year HUD Annual Action Plan.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Sally Stang with the Department of Housing and Community Services for the record. The item that I have for you today is the 2022-23 fourth year program annual action plan for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So the city does receive annual allocations of funds for community development activities through HUD. Those funded activities align with the city's goals of creating a livable and sustainable community. The funds are used to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and affordable housing. We received 3 funding streams through this plan. The Community Development Block Grant. This is our most flexible form of funding, and we do a wide variety of activities. There's actually 101 eligible uses for CDBG. The Home Investment Partnership Program. This is used to create affordable housing units for low-income households, and the Emergency Solutions Grant, used to address homelessness in our community. The award amounts, the specific amounts for 22-23, are unknown. Due to delays in appropriations by Congress, they have not yet been released. So all of our planning activities have been done at equal funding from last year. I really do expect we're going to see a slight decrease in CDBG, a slight increase in home, and a slight increase in ESG funding based on appropriations. But the timing on this, in order to make sure we receive our funding on time, we wanted to make sure we got through the planning process. So we have, one of the requirements is our consolidated plan. That's our 5-year action plan that identifies the community needs and our spending priorities for these 3 funding streams. And then each year we have to develop and submit an annual action plan that allocates funding for that particular year and specifies what activities we're going to undergo. The 4th year action plan is due to HUD within 45 days of receiving our allocation amounts, and that will be for the period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. We utilize a grants review committee to review proposals received from community service providers that are interested in receiving CDBG, ESG, or home. They conducted a public hearing regarding proposals and applications in February and made selection and funding recommendations that are included today. So this year's GRC and RFP process informed a 2-year funding cycle to close out the 5-year consolidated plan. So their recommendations are for the 22-23 and 23-24 program years. So the award amounts determined for each agency will be allocated in 2023, and then again 22-23, then 23-24 based on funding availability and performance. And the contracts will be structured as 2-year contract with initial allocation and an option for renewal. During the 2019-2024 consolidated plan process, the City Council expressed the desire to give preference to qualified entities that had not received 3 consecutive years of CDBG, home, or ESG funding. As this is the 4th program year of our consolidated plan, this is the first year this preference was implemented. So Community Development Block Grant, as I said, is our most flexible funding stream. Any project must meet a national objective. That means the project has to benefit low to moderate income households or businesses, prevent slum or blight in neighborhoods, or address an urgent community need. They have particular eligible spending activities. Like I said, there's 101 of them. But at least 70% of our funding must be used to benefit low to moderate income persons. So we are recommending an allocation of just over $214,000 for public facilities and infrastructure improvements. This would be available in high priority funding areas, including the Affordable Housing Fund pilot areas. We see this as an excellent way to be able to leverage resources. If we're going to make an investment in affordable housing in pilot areas, there may need to be some infrastructure or other improvements that come alongside that. CDBG housing activities, this is always our biggest pot of money. That is for the home repair program to help homeowners make repairs on their homes. We have administration, of course, program management, indirect cost, and then this year we've actually added a line item for consolidated plan activities. I know we're just into our 4th year of the existing consolidated plan, but it takes over a year of planning activities and public engagement to put together the next 5-year plan. So we'll be going out in the spring of 2023 to bring in a consultant to assist us with that public engagement process so we have a thorough and complete process for developing the 2024 5-year consolidated plan. And then we have our category of public services. Generally, entitlements are only allowed to spend 15% of their CDBG allocation for public services. But we happen to have been grandfathered in and have a set cap at just over 1.1 million, which is actually a little over a third of our CDBG allocation can be used for public services. And we're looking at allocating just over 1.1 million to the Office of Community Services. So that's the funding that supports the neighborhood resource centers. The Housing and Community Services, that $75,000 is for the program coordinator who administers the Housing First program, where the program funding comes from the city and the county joint venture, but the funding for the staff comes from CDBG. We have $250,000 for domestic violence shelter services, just over $212,000 for youth crime prevention and enrichment, and $200,000 again for the Summer Youth Employment Program. For the CDBG, the Grants Review Committee reviewed requests for funding for domestic violence shelter and are recommending $89,422 to Catholic Charities Harbor House, $27,217 to Stepstone, and $133,361 to Wichita Family Crisis Center. For the youth services, we only received 2 applications, and the Grants Review Committee is recommending $113,387 to the YMCA Middle School After School Program, which is to serve over 3,000 youth, and Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters at $36,613 to provide youth with volunteer mentors. We also have a youth program with Parks and Recreation Department in Plainview, and their program is a cost of $62,674, commonly called the Latchkey Program. For youth employment, once again, we're asking for $200,000 for the Way to Work program. By the way, we're still looking for job placements for the Way to Work program. We're about 38 placements short. So if you know a small business or government office that's looking for some help, please reach out. We have received 223 applications for youth employment this summer. That's Summer Youth Employment Program. The funding for this is actually, we're always about a year behind. So the $200,000 for this year's summer program is from last year's allocation. This allocation will fund next summer's program. I know the spreadsheet's a little bit hard to read. I did want to, it's in your packet. I also provided to you for reference. It shows funding across all of the years so far of our 5-year consolidated plan. But this year I added this amount available column on there because I noticed last year when we brought this up, there was some concerns in areas where we weren't recommending a funding allocation in the current year. And that was because there was still funding left over from previous allocations. An example of that might be the Small Business Assistance Program. We didn't put in for additional money out of this year's allocation because we still are spending the $220,000 through the Propel program that hasn't been tapped into yet. So it's not that they're not have money at their resources to be able to use, they're just not recommending any additional money be added this year. Same thing with the land bank. It's another one where not any more money this year because we still have money to spend from last year. So just kind of showing you from year to year across all of the different spending categories for CDBG. We move on to the home program. The Grants Review Committee met on this. The regulations state that a minimum of 15% of our home funds must be spent through community housing development organizations. They have a specific makeup to qualify as a community housing development organization, such as a third of the board must actually be comprised of low-income individuals. They must have capacity and staff to carry out the tasks of housing development. It makes it very, very challenging for organizations to qualify as a CHODO. This year, at staff's recommendation, the Grants Review Committee elected to defer the vote on CHODO set-aside funding to allow the newly formed Affordable Housing Review Board to make funding recommendations for the council upon its establishment, seeing that as an opportunity to leverage home resources with the Affordable Housing Fund resources before making decisions. So the CHODO set-aside the funding for those specific buildings will be managed out of the Housing Development Loan Program, and again, reviewed by the Affordable Housing Review Board. We are expecting around $1.5 million in home funds, program administration at 10%. The Home Ownership 80 program is the down payment assistance program. We're recommending an additional $463,792. And then just over $1,029,067 to go into the Housing Development Loan Program pool. Again, same spreadsheet that you were provided before, shows you allocations from first year to the current fourth year, and then the total amount available. So we do see for the down payment assistance, that increase of $463,000 is going to bring them up to about $900,000 in down payment assistance available, which I think is going to marry up well with the Affordable Housing Fund program. There's also additional funding. The Housing Development Loan Program will have significant funding, over $1.3 million, to add to that effort. The Emergency Solutions Grant. So the regulations for ESG require that the jurisdiction consult with the continuum of care about the allocations of ESG funds. Our continuum of care is administered by the United Way of the Plains, and the continuum of care has a coordinating team that reviewed the proposals for Emergency Solutions Fund, grants funds, and they made recommendations on homelessness assistance, shelter services, and homeless prevention funding amounts, and presented those to the Grants Review Committee. So they also participated in the public hearing regarding those proposals in February of '22. Unlike last year, the Grants Review Committee actually did agree 100% with the recommendations of the Continuum of Care coordinating team and made recommendations exactly to the dollar as recommended. But one thing to note, this is the first year that there was this preference for new projects. This is the first year we received a request for funding from the Wichita Children's Home for shelter services, and both the Continuum of Care Coordinating Committee and the Grants Review Committee recommended funding the Wichita Children's Home. That increase, obviously, expense meant a decrease in funding across the board to all other shelter providers in order for us to fund that new program. But that new program is serving a demographic not previously funded in youth. Under homeless prevention, they're recommending $25,000 to the Center of Hope and $13,146 to the Salvation Army. So the total amount is about $250,000 for ESG. HUD limits the amount that we're allowed to spend for shelter services. There's a 60% cap that can be spent for shelter and outreach. That's really based on the Hearth Act of 2009, the Homeless Emergency Assistance and Rapid Transition to Housing, specified that there are better uses for this funding than shelter services. So they said you can't spend more than 60% in that arena. So we do, the recommendations do have for us to spend up to 60% for shelter services and outreach, homeless prevention at $38,146, rapid rehousing at $57,669. That is administered through the housing department, and then program administration is only 7.5%. Again, side by side, graphic showing funding over the 4 years of the consolidated plan and the amounts available. Financial considerations. The home program regulations require that the jurisdiction provide a 25% match. So we meet that match obligation through permit fee waivers, additional grants and loans for down payment assistance that's provided through local CDFIs and CHODOs, and other funding or reduced charges offered to CHODOs and other organizations receiving home development subsidy. So those fee waivers and connection waivers help us greatly in meeting this 25% match. In ESG, we're required to provide a dollar-for-dollar match. So we receive about $250,000 in ESG. We meet that match requirement by the city and county's investment in the Housing First program. So that $191,000 by each the city and the county help us meet that dollar-for-dollar match requirement. There is no impact to the general fund. The development of the consolidated plan and the annual plan are required for us to be able to receive the federal funds. What we have here, the allocations are estimated, and as such, it's required that we outline what adjustments would be made in the event that allocations are higher or lower than estimated. In the event that actual allocations are greater than 20% higher or lower than estimated, the department must restart the citizen participation plan process and come back before the city council. We really don't expect we're going to see an increase or a decrease of 20% in any category. CDBG program management, including administration and indirect costs, will be reduced or increased to the maximum of the 20% of the grant as allowed. If the grant is less than anticipated, an amount equivalent to up to 20% of the reduced funding would be reduced from infrastructure project line items, because those are internal and easily adjusted. If the deduction is not sufficient to cover the reduced funding, the balance would be deducted from home repair. If the grant is greater than anticipated, the amounts equivalent to up to 20% of the increased funding would be added to infrastructure. The home program, again, 10% cap on administration. We will adjust to actual amounts, up or down. If the grant is less than anticipated, an amount equivalent to the reduction would be deducted from the housing development loan pool. If the grant is greater, it would be added to the housing development loan pool. ESG funds, as I said before, admin is capped at 7.5%. That would be adjusted to the actual 7.5% of the actual amount. The grant is less than anticipated. Funding would be reduced from the rapid rehousing line item. If it's increased, it would go into the rapid rehousing line item. Again, part of the reason we're doing this with unknown amounts is to ensure that we're able to access the funds as quickly as possible. Any delay in bringing this forward would delay when agencies would have access to funding in order to make these projects happen in our community. So I think I have a record here for my longest recommendation. It is recommended that the City Council close the public hearing, approve the approximate funding allocations and staff and Grants Review Committee recommendations, authorize staff to make adjustments as described in the financial considerations section. Upon receipt of HUD grant allocations, authorize submission of the 2022-2023 annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development upon receipt of the HUD grant allocations, and authorize the funding agreements and necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. How did you guys work to figure out, like I saw the suggestions that they were asking for the amount, and then some of them were significantly smaller, and then I know that some people applied, like the children's home that hadn't in the past. So how did you divvy up the money?
That was actually the Grants Review Committee.
Okay.
They reviewed the applications, they interviewed the applicants, had discussions about high points, low points in the applications. If they had been funded in the past, staff provided them actual information about how they performed in the past, and then the Grants Review Committee made that decision.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, these are all based off of last year's allotment from the grants.
Correct.
Anything extra is going to go into the infrastructure project?
In CDBG, we said the infrastructure line item. I actually am expecting we're probably going to see a slight decrease in CDBG based on the national allocation.
Okay. Is that a practice that has continued from the past to put the extra money into infrastructure?
It's an area because those projects aren't defined at the beginning of the cycle. They're kind of identified along the way. And it's not an agreement we have with an outside entity at this point where we would be coming back and going, we're cutting you. It's something that we manage internally, usually through MOUs with facilities or parks, those kind of things. So we have a little bit more control even after the fact. And that's why that decision was made.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, further questions for staff or discussion for staff? We'll open up to public discussion. I know we have at least one speaker.
Again, I'm Lee McLeod. As the president of the Neighborhood Association in Benjamin Hills and Pleasant Valley, I'm also on, I was asked by the Wichita Independent Neighborhood, WIN, to represent WIN on the Grant Review Committee and the Zoom calls for the allocation plans. And it was a wonderful opportunity and eye-opener to see, because I have years and years of nonprofit background and know about how tough it is in social services to raise money and also to overcome stigmas of certain things like homelessness and mental illness. It was a passion for me to serve on there. I'd like to tell you a quick story, and I really need your attention. This isn't about the numbers on the thing. On April the 6th, I received an email from Suzanne Bose of the Sedgwick County Metropolitan, what do you know, Suzanne? She's with the Housing and anyway, Suzanne finds people that have problems taking care of their property, and if they get violation sightings, they give some timing, right? So she sends us out to neighborhood association presidents to see if we can help and find some volunteers to help these usually elderly people that have had health crises. Well, on April the 6th, she sent out an urgent email because she had a family in Councilperson Bluebaugh's area at 1220 South Fern that had been evicted that morning, no notice, had an attorney show up on their doorstep, and they had an hour to clear out what they wanted, put some things out on the porch, and she locked it up. The mother and father have 4 children. The father is on disability from a stroke. They have the mother, I'm going to give you, they've been receiving WERAP funds, or they thought they were receiving WERAP funds to pay their rent on that rental. 6 months ago, the mother was in the hospital having a baby and had COVID at the same time. So somehow during that period while she was in the hospital, the WERAP program had an error on a phone number contact for her, and so they were not able to reach her, and her WERAP funds were dropped from that point on, and that's why apparently she was evicted. She was not told that they were not being sent. Okay. A family with 4 children, 2 of them school age, 2 of them under school. I recalled my experiences on the Grant Review Committee. First of all, okay, well, we know there's some homeless shelter facilities in town. Have you called them? Well, Suzanne had already contacted them, Harbor House and the Family Crisis Center. No, they didn't have room. Okay. So I also told the mother to call them herself. She had to leave a message. She left a message for Center for Hope. All of these agencies that are on receiving your money that you are going to approve and raise money from the public and their own private donors. They don't they don't return calls to this family for 3 days. Okay, so my first question was, do they not have any hotel vouchers for people if they don't have space in their shelters, right? Well, one of the agencies, when we did that, my time is up.
You can complete your thought, though. I'm not going to cut you off.
One of the agencies answered my question for that during the grant review committee that yes, they did have some housing, some hotel vouchers. Well, apparently they don't have enough, and if they don't return calls, then they don't do that. So I managed to find some private funds of my own and use my own and contacted a church in my neighborhood, and we found enough for them to be put up in a hotel for several nights. This, of course, is always on a weekend when this happens, right? The next week, they were told by the WERAP office, oh, yeah, we're working on it. You should be approved. But you have to find a place to live. Okay, they looked over the next week. Well, today is what, May 3rd? They still are homeless. They have been in hotels since April the 6th. Maybe one night with trying to live with family that have minimal space for their whole family. I don't know where the solution is, but first of all, I'd like for you to understand that on Friday, I called to get an appointment with you, Mayor, or my council person, and I called the number here at the city, and I was put on hold for 20 minutes. And at that point, I said, I'm going to the city council meeting. You need to, first of all, have enough staff to answer phones and not have them all channeled for all of you through one answering service. You need to have somebody that can tell you something besides just the numbers and the good stories of the WERAP program. You got to find the problems and where the ones that are falling through the cracks, because even when we get them in a hotel, they get kicked out of a hotel room by some management that says, you were too loud, or you stained the towels, or we can't give you your deposit back. I want, if you're getting new hotels in this town all the time, for you to consider the hotel industry to be coughing up a few more of the vouchers that you can use for emergency people that are in family homeless situations. I know I want a lot more, and I'm not going to come to many more meetings and complain to you. I would love to be able to meet with you personally or start some kind of an oversight committee that would help watch over the grant funds that you're approving. I know I can do that. I'm retired, and I have a passion for efficiency. So thank you for listening, and I hope you, I don't know what the WERAP office can, they may decide that they still can't help her because the place that they did find may not approve, the management may not approve because she has an eviction on her record now. Whether it was legal or not legal, she's working with legal aid and had a court motion date in the middle of April that the attorney, of course, got continued. So there's no action there. Thank you.
So, ma'am, there's some folks on the board who might be asking questions if you're willing to stand for questions. First, I just want to say I really appreciate you coming in today. I'm so sorry that you weren't able to get in touch with me on Friday. I do want you to have my personal cell number, so that doesn't happen again. Just don't text me weird things or misuse it. But in the future, we do need to be able to hear where there's some holes in our system so that we can approach our staff who want to be as efficient as possible. So really thank you for coming out today. Sorry that we weren't able to touch base on Friday and it forced you out in this type of weather. With that, I do have some folks on the board. I'm not sure if they're going to ask you questions, but they did get on the board while you were speaking, so they might actually be asking you to some clarifying questions. So with that, Councilmember Blubaugh.
Thank you, Mayor. And I had just learned about this yesterday afternoon. Becky Fields and I were trying to work through it.
It's my problem that I didn't think to contact your CSR because I know Becky, she lives in my neighborhood.
Yeah, and she told me about the conversations. Just trying to, was there maybe some opportunities with Family Promise that we could, wasn't there maybe some opportunities we could work through that channel?
I gave her that number yesterday to call.
Okay.
So
Well, I
don't know
appreciate
whether she'll meet the.
I appreciate everything you're doing, and maybe we can have a offline meeting there about, because I want to better understand WERAP, when it starts, when it ends, and kind of
Yes,
there's two sides to every story, and kind of want to understand, and that's what I told Becky too. I want to understand all the parameters of the issue and find out if there's holes, what exactly we can do, and accountability on both sides.
Well, I have tried to connect her with as many agencies as I know.
Sure.
And I also suggested, I've found that with her husband's disability, he's not physically disabled, but that I did research and tell her that, he could earn a part-time job in addition to his disability check, up to $1,250 a month. And that was kind of news to them. So hopefully when they get back in a place to live, that they will start looking for part-time work for him and help for her. She's got health issues also following the pregnancy. It's just so complex. And then, of course, Becky also told me about the community service police officer, that if I would have known about those, I could have maybe accessed some other things too through them earlier. But in the meantime, they aren't in a hotel because they've run out of money.
Well, I appreciate your advocacy. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you looking for a solution, and I appreciate you putting up money out of your own pocket. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, and I hope there's a opportunity for us to talk about other programs, because if WERAP isn't hitting the mark on this, there might be another program that will.
I know, and it's not permanent WERAP. I probably need to make an appointment to visit with the WERAP people myself. On top of all the other problems, of course, their vehicle is very unreliable. So, getting her down here for even to come to the city hall could be a problem. And getting their kids, because they had to pull them out of their previous school. I had no idea it was so complex without being in a homeless shelter.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I too wanted to thank you for being here today, and sorry about your experience. I know that there has been some challenges with WERAP. Our team's working hard, and sometimes those things happen, so definitely connect with Sally behind you and the team. Also, reaching out, the CSR for District 1 is Tasha Hayes. So if you ever reach out to her or myself over at Atwater, you can definitely get a hold of us. And I support WIN and would love to sit down and talk to you more about that process. And if there's any oversight concerns you have, happy to talk to you about that as well.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, thank you so much for going above and beyond to help this family. I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And 4 kids being there, that's a tough thing to imagine. I was aware of this last week. Our CSRs are looking into and delving into this. I do believe that, from what I understand, there were communication issues. So that may have been part of it, but I do take what you say to heart about oversight and making sure that we are held accountable for how we use our funds. So I appreciate that from you.
Yeah, and I think I may have mentioned it even during the Grant Review Committee, but if not, it's even more real to me now that we have to know not just the numbers at the end of every quarter or every year and their success stories, but we've got to be able to know why they're challenged. I know that the county ComCare and every other nonprofit agency is challenged in staffing, but then, what are they doing about it? They chose to work in that area. They have a passion. They have an obligation to try to fix it too. And if nothing else, to come and talk to you when they have a problem and not just push it under the rug.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to kind of piggyback on my colleagues, I appreciate you coming up here and sitting through all of the meeting to express that. that is one of the things that I worry about a lot too, is the people that do kind of slip through the cracks. I know that Sally and her team worked so hard with the WeWrap program, helping allocate millions of dollars. And so if your friends were, able to be helped a little bit, that's awesome, but there also needs to be an end game too. So I apologize that for the staff that put you on hold for 20 minutes or whatever happened with that. I try to make myself really accessible to you and to the rest of Wichita for that matter. But I will connect with you afterwards.
I'm going to give you the name. If you're going to, or maybe you know the name. If you would follow up with WeWrap and see what's happening, because they're still waiting to try to get into an apartment. And if WeWrap doesn't advocate for them with the apartment managers, then who will? They can't just say, okay, wait for the check to go. They have to contact them and do a little, shaking of the
We'll share with the rest of the council if we can come up with any solutions. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, continuation of our public input.
My name is Sybil Strum. I reside at 326 North Walnut. I was homeless. Your people made me homeless. Not you, but the ex-city council made me homeless. I ended up walking the streets in wintertime, any kind of weather. I had to scrape up money to go to restaurants. I was appalled by that I called Brandon Johnson. I told him what was going on. So I know what you're saying. And I also am appalled that my daughter tried to get the rental deal, but she was told by the rental people or the housing authority that they could not give her a grant. So she's been scraping up every amount of money to pay for her apartment. You say that you are doing a good job. No, you're not. You're not doing a good job. And as for the shelters, I went to the Salvation Army shelter, and it was endangerment. There was a lady next door at the Salvation Army getting strangled by her boyfriend. And I stepped in, and I said, hey, get off of her. Those places are not that safe. I know. And being out on the streets is not safe. And you're having us pay for high-class hotels and apartments. And we don't have the money. And as she said, she took out of her own pocket and paid for those people to live in that hotel. I've done that. I'm a nonprofit organization. You didn't know that, but I am. I'm for the homeless. I'm for the elderly. I'm for the veterans. I'm for the military. And I never, ever asked you for money. I have helped kids that were in abusive homes and alcoholic homes. And I took them in my own home and fed them. So you need to learn. You better get some staffing. I don't know. Jamie, or what's her name, I called her on when I was homeless. I did not know about my house being torn down. You people, not you, Mayor Whipple, or not Brandon Johnson, or not Mike, or whatever his name is, or
Whatever his name is. Sorry, that was funny. Go ahead. You have a minute left.
You did not tell me. You did not contact me. I found out on my own when I saw that my house was wrecked. That was terrible. I was homeless. I was in a situation where I didn't have no place to lay down my head. But Brandon Johnson, City Council, Brandon Johnson, came to my rescue, And Blue Ball, City Blue Ball, Jeff Blue Ball, you did not even help me. You're my 4th district. You're supposed to be there for the constituents. You did not help me. No, you did not help me. That man did. You sat there and let me in the dark. The housing authority left me in the dark. And I'm going to tell y'all, that was not right. You better get your story straight, and you better get yourself more staffing. Thank you.
All right. Who is that guy in the end? With that, we have a few folks on the board. Let's go first to Vice Mayor Tuttle.
Thank you. And my heart was aching when the speaker earlier was telling us the story of the family, and I'm glad that we're going to try and work with them. But I did want to just pause. There's a lot of good work in this and a lot of impact in the community, and for the one, situation that we heard of, that is unfortunate. But I didn't want to go without saying that I appreciate the review committee. I did it before I was on council, and so I know what goes into it, and so I appreciate the community members who volunteered to do that. And then also, I just wanted to take a moment. One of the other programs that's highlighted in here and that we will be funding is the Greater Wichita YMCA, and thank you, Tyrone Baker, for being here today. I personally worked with the middle school after-school program when I was at the Y. 3,000 kids, for example, go to that program every year in 13 different schools. And if they didn't have that opportunity, they might get in trouble. They wouldn't maybe have something to eat for the rest of the evening because food is also provided. So that's just one example. But when we look through here, we see the Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters and other housing programs. So I just wanted to make sure that we also reflect on the good work that's in this item. And then I also, Tyrone, would ask that you take our thoughts and prayers with you back to your friends at the YMCA. I know that everyone's heart is certainly with you during this time of rebuilding the Andover YMCA and the great assets that it was, and also the members of where they're going to go and child care issues. So thank you to the Y for all you do for our community, and please extend mine, I hope my council colleagues' thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just some clarification, though I appreciate the acknowledgement. All I had was one conversation with Councilmember Claycomb, and it was Councilmember Claycomb and our housing staff that addressed that issue. So I just wanted to give the credit where it was due.
Further discussion. So also the YMCA after school program really sticks out. It's a program that I worked on when I was in college and can attest to the benefits of having a safe place for those young folks to be for those 2 hours to 3 hours before when school ends to when parents get home, and having a snack and making sure that they have time to study and do their homework. It's an incredible program. However, I don't have the type of experience that Vice Mayor Tuttle does in this field, so therefore I'm actually going to, if it's okay, to give the floor to Vice Mayor Tuttle and let her make the motion for this.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I would move that Wichita City Council close the public hearing, approve the appropriate funding allocations and staff grant review committee recommendations, authorize staff to make adjustments to funding allocations as described in the financial consideration section upon the receipt of HUD grant allocations, authorize submission of the 2022-2023 annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and upon receipt of HUD grant allocations, and authorize the funding agreement and necessary signatures.
And on the board, we have Councilmember Johnson, who will speak to the motion and possibly even make a second.
Actually, due to a personal conflict, I have to abstain from this vote.
Therefore, we will not be seeking a second from Councilmember Johnson. Please let the record show that Councilmember Johnson will be abstaining from this vote. I will be making the second to that motion made by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 68 votes to 1 abstention, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Repair or removal of dangerous and unsafe structure.
Welcome. You okay?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, good.
Just making sure no one else had shown up for our public hearing portion of this.
Okay.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. I'm Kaylin Nethercott with MABCD. The property under consideration today is 1846 South Water, and it's located in District 3. I'd like to review with you the property details first, and then talk a little bit about the process that it's been through to date. As you'll see from the photos, the structure was badly damaged by fire on January 20th, 2020. It's a 1.5-story frame dwelling, roughly 63 by 26 feet in size, with rotted and missing siding, a badly worn composition roof with holes, dilapidated front and rear porches, and a 20 by 18-foot accessory structure that has also been badly damaged by fire. The first floor of the structure was boarded up by MABCD's contractors, and the second floor remains unsecured. The property's had an open housing case basically since the fire, and it was uninsured at the time that it burned. The owner of the property is deceased, and there was no will in place to assign ownership to heirs. The property taxes are outstanding for 2019 through 2021 in the amount of $2,115.91, and that includes special assessments and interest. There is a special assessment for 2022 in the amount of $2,064.25 for a board up and mowing. The property was placarded as uninhabitable in April of 2021. Excuse me, technical difficulties. It's been vacant since January of 2020. The Wichita Police Department has requested MABCD assistance with this property on 2 separate occasions. In the last 5 years, there have been 13 reported police incidents at this location. The current premise conditions, as you saw from the pictures, do include dead vegetation. So far, no other nuisance conditions exist. So the property was first reviewed by the Board of Code Standards and Appeals on July 12th, 2021, and subsequently received extensions to September 13th, October 4th, December 6th, and January 3rd. As a reminder, the maximum length of time that the BCSA will typically work with a property is 6 months, and they reached that deadline. Now, the good news is the daughter of the deceased owner has been involved, and she has an associate who has expressed continued interest in buying the property. Mr. Dukes, the associate, was here earlier, but he's a small business owner. It was taking a little longer than he thought to get to this agenda item, and he had to go to work. So I told him I would certainly convey to you all what he wanted for you to hear. The issue on this property, in addition to the dilapidation, is the ownership. They, Mr. Dukes and the daughter, have finally been able to provide us a receipt that they have engaged a probate attorney as of April 27th. They're also looking to engage a structural engineer, which would be part of MABCD's requirements for them to even begin to think about repairing this. Now, the good news is, if the ownership issues can be worked out, they can get an engineer's report, determine the full scope of work to be done. Once legal ownership is in place, they can make the decision then whether they'd like to try to repair, remove, or sell. It's just simply a matter of how long would you all like to entertain this property sitting as it is for them to do that. I know my Councilmember Hoheisel, we have had some feedback from neighbors in that area. I've conversed with Becca Johnson about this. So the people are noticing that it's been a while since it's burned. But again, that is the circumstance as we have it right now.
Questions for staff?
I don't think anyone else is going to speak, but I am just,
Just hang around. All right, we have a couple of members who are on the board.
Of course.
So with that, Chair recognizes Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. I appreciate this report. With the possible change in ownership of the probate, would that mean that all of the property tax and special assessments, I count about $4,300, would that all be taken care of as part of that?
So if it simply goes through probate, and the daughter is still the owner, I believe that there would still be the responsibility for those outstanding taxes, because it's not a sale change of ownership, it would be a probate change of ownership.
So it should still be on the hook for all of that.
Yes, that's my understanding. Jennifer can correct me if I'm wrong. That's right, okay.
All right, Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. Is the daughter the current owner of the house? I know they were.
No.
No.
No, her deceased mother is still listed as the owner of record.
What are the chances that the ownership gets figured out here in the next 60 days or so?
The interested parties, the daughter and her associate, had been encouraged early on in the process with BCSA back in July of last year to get the probate process started. They did not. So they've only just begun that. I would say at a minimum that's a 6 to 9 month process for that ownership to be, it's a lengthy process to go through that probate. So I wouldn't look for any resolution to this in the short term, i.e. 60 to 90 days.
The 13 separate police actions, or the times that police have been called out to the property, could you just give me just a description of some of them? I see we have at least 2 suicide attempts, a couple of different larceny cases, domestic violence, et cetera, et cetera.
Attempt to locate mental case, mistreatment of an adult dependent, suspicious character, motor vehicle theft. I will say this, I believe since we've gotten it boarded up and it's not actually occupied, some of that police activity appears to have slowed down a bit. The challenge will be keeping it secured moving forward. We have people helping us keep an eye on the second floor to make sure that people aren't accessing it in that way.
This is a tough one for me because I don't want to knock down a house when it can be rehabbed, but at the same time, there's public safety is at issue here. I really wish that Mr. Dukes would have stuck around a little bit so I could get an explanation about the process they're going through and why it's taken so long to begin this process.
I would imagine it's financial.
It's financial.
Yes.
I'd like to defer it for 30 days just to get a better, or for until maybe the beginning of June, just to get a clearer picture on what the process is that they're going through. If it looks like nothing's going on with it, I'll be back here ready to get moving on this. But I would at least, with the new information that's come up here in the last 4 or 5 days, I think I should at least parse through that and take a look at that first.
We'll keep an eye on it and do our best to make sure that it stays secured in that time frame.
I appreciate that.
And I appreciate the update on boarding up the windows, make sure the property is secure, and that information of the 13 police incidents happen when it seems to happen when the property wasn't secure. I think public safety is something that I share as a concern with my colleague, and if that's the case in which now it seems much more secure, then allowing some time, I think would make sense.
As long as people won't try to go through the second floor windows, we'll be fine. We've seen a bit of that trend increasing lately. So typically we don't board second story windows as part of our emergency board up procedures, but in selective instances we have. If need be on this one, we can certainly do that. It will just add to the assessments against the property if we have to do that. So,
Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm supportive of what Councilmember Hoheisel said. Can we encourage Mr. Dukes in 30 days that we never know how long the meeting might go, but if he could stay in case other people had questions, that would be helpful.
I'll do my best.
Further discussion on this?
He did check in with me before he left, if that's any consolation. He did check in before he left.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. Did he give any indication about getting a structural engineer in there to get an assessment here anytime soon?
I believe they've made some inquiries about that, but have not yet been able to secure those services. I did let him know that I would call him after this meeting and let him know what you all decided. Might be able to give him just a couple of pointers on that process as well, just to move it along. It won't be as big of an expense for them to engage the engineer as it was to engage the probate attorney. So hopefully that part can move along concurrently.
Okay, yeah, they're having problems with the financial aspect of it already.
Yes, sir.
I don't know that they'll even want to continue if they see the price tag that a structural engineer will add to it.
We've been encouraging them to look at all aspects of this.
I appreciate that.
Of course.
Further discussion? See none. Councilmember Hoheisel, would you like to have the floor for a motion?
Yes, I would, and I think I'll need some help parsing through this one. I'm looking directly at you, Jennifer. So what would be the appropriate motion? I move to defer
Make a motion
action.
to defer, and you would like to specify a date. If you said early June, that would be June 7th. That would be the council meeting. So you could say the motion to defer this item until the June 7th meeting.
Okay, yep, I move to defer this motion until June 7th, the June 7th City Council meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. The item is delayed. Madam Clerk. Thank you, staff.
And I'd just like to say thank you for everything you do. You guys have a tough job out there, but you guys are doing what you can to parse through this as well as you can, so I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Overestimate bid and funding for Swanson Park pedestrian bridge.
Nice pen you got there, Troy.
Thank you very much. I think it's almost afternoon, so good afternoon. Troy Hauptman, Director of Parks and Recreation, and with me is Gary Jans from Engineering. We're going to present this item in regards to Swanson Park pedestrian bridge. So a little bit of background. Back in April 13th, 2021, the council and the CA $400,000 of general obligation funds for 2021 park enhancement projects. This particular fund was going to be split between two priorities, one of them which is Swanson Park Bridge and the pedestrian bridge, and the other one which is the exterior front patio of Edgemore Recreation Center, which is consistently being flooded, and so that's one of the reasons why these two are of a concern, because of safety and operational items within both of these facilities. So the pedestrian bridge at Swanson needs to be replaced. Currently, the wood structure has deteriorated and is extremely damaged. It's also covered with some vandalism. It's a heavily used bridge. It sees daily use in the park by the patrons, and it will be replaced with a low-maintenance steel bridge with concrete abutments, providing more durable and long-lasting structure. So the existing bridge, this is a really nice picture from one perspective. I'm going to provide you some more pictures of some of the damage that we're looking at, of all the dry rot that is occurring, and is really a safety concern in regards to the stabilization of the bridge. So here you see on the very far right-hand side, this is one of the supports that goes up and over the bridge, and it is extremely deteriorated. In the middle, we have two joints that are adjoining right underneath the bridge, and this area is deteriorating. You could actually start flaking some of this wood right off. So these are some of the concerns that we're having about this bridge. There on the walkway on the far left, we have a plank that is actually has a gap. Underneath the bridge, we see substantial damage as well. And then on the very far right-hand side, you can see that support, once again, is very deteriorated. And that's on the surface, but even actually within and going down this support, it's really, really damaged. We had noticed this several years back, and that we've been working on trying to get a program together to replace this. The location, this is an aerial view, and the the bridge actually goes over the cow skin, and this is where the cow skin actually begins and a little bit further up north. But what we see in this river area, or not river, but stream area, is that when it rains, it's extremely strong, and there's a lot of flooding that occurs here. So a lot of water does accumulate into this creek. It's a little bit further out from the street, so as I think I mentioned at last week when we had our meeting, that it's going to take some work to actually get this bridge into the park. That's one of the reasons why it's a little bit more expensive than what we expected. So this is an example of what it's going to look like spanning the creek. And all metal, and I do believe it's a concrete walkway, so this should last for many, many years. So the analysis, I think I'm going to, actually this is your spot. Yeah.
Thank you, Troy. Mayor, council members, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. I'm going to chat with you real quick about the financial side of the project, a few logistical things related to acceptance of the overestimate bid. So the lowest and only bid received on April 8th exceeded a consultant engineer's estimate by approximately $212,000. In talking to the local bridge community, these are the same bridge contractors who build our larger vehicle bridges because of the requirement for the abutments and everything that goes into this. There's a lot of work going on locally and regionally for these bridge contractors, and that's why we only got one bid, and we're probably lucky that we got that one bid. In talking to them about options, about what happens maybe if we consider waiting and trying to make this pedestrian bridge last a little bit longer, see what the future might bring with pricing, which is really an unknown at this time. One of the biggest things we heard, because we're having the same discussion with them about our Amadon Street Bridge and trying to make sure we stay on track with that. KDOT has a lot of work coming up in the region here in the next 2 years, especially with the next phase of the North Junction, East Kellogg firing up, and then K96 after that. Our bridge contractors estimate that a year from now that none of them would be able to take this on, just like they wouldn't be able to take on the Amadon Street Bridge. So we think it's best to stay the course now and keep moving forward on this project, because next year we probably wouldn't find a contractor, and it very well could be that the prices may be even higher. So with that, accepting this bid will allow the project to continue without requiring rebid, thus eliminating potential cost increase and construction delay. In an effort to account for the funding shortfall, 2 separate donations have been secured. One was a private anonymous donation, and I'll talk about the numbers in just a minute. The other was a donation from the Wichita Parks Foundation. We're also utilizing additional funding that will be repurposed from the 2022 Park Facility Enhancements budget that was approved by the City Council in December of 2021. So just an overall summary of the funding is the existing project budget shows as $283,800. That's actually for construction only. That number actually overall is $360,000. And I'm telling you this, I apologize, that wasn't that way on the slide. We were kind of tracking on what the construction number was, but if anybody's adding up numbers, these won't quite add up to the total. So that existing project budget is actually $360,000. The anonymous donation was $100,000. The donation from the Wichita Parks Foundation was $59,000. And the reallocation of funds from the parks facility enhancements, the $73,250, brings us to an actual overall total of $592,250 for the project. So the gap between the construction amount, the $516,050, and the $592,250 is for project-related costs, for oversight, design, project management, as we see on all of our projects. The council, the bid acceptance before the council for the overestimate bid complies with Charter Ordinance 228, and the Law Department has reviewed and approved the memorandum of understanding for the donations and the amending resolutions as to form. Staff recommends City Council accept the donations, approve acceptance of the lowest bid, adopt the amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. One last thing I might mention, because this question came up, and then Councilmember Ballard asked me about the same, and I meant to mention this. Looking at different materials right now and costs, the price of lumber is still up. There was a question asked about why don't we look at another wooden bridge. I think when we started looking at that, the cost got close enough to a steel bridge, and if you look at the overall life cycle cost, we come out much further ahead going with this proposed steel bridge that we're going with here. So anyway, with that, staff would be happy to answer any questions.
There are questions for staff. Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Gary and Troy, for that. Yeah, I had a little sticker shock when I seen this at first, but then I go back to how old are those bridges in Pawnee Prairie Park? They're 40 plus years, the steel bridge, and they're still in excellent condition. So why the cost is out there, I do think we'll get our years worth of use out of them. And those don't even have a concrete bottom like this one. So this, I don't know what you're estimating for life, but it's probably outlived me, I think.
Further questions for staff? See none. Is there public input on this item? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If not, then we will give the floor to Councilmember Fry of District 5.
Thank you. So I appreciate the staff's report, and recently KDOT had a local consult at the Aviation Museum where they talked about the bridge impact across the state, and so we heard very clearly that the availability of bridge contractors is going to be at a premium, and obviously we know about the cost of materials. So this bridge is used extremely often by surrounding neighbors, and I've been on it. It feels very unsafe. I mean, I'm a big guy, and it sways when I walk on it, so I can imagine you get more than one on there. I do want to thank our anonymous donor for this significant contribution, and then also the Wichita Park Foundation. This is exactly what the Plates for Parks program was intended to help cover those gaps, and I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to help reduce that amount because of that. So when you see those license plates on cars all over town, you'll know why. That I feel pretty good about that program. So with that, I move that the City Council accept the donations, approve acceptance of the lowest bid, adopt the amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote.
Councilmember Blueball, would you cast your vote, please? Thank you.
Having received 78 votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Grounds Maintenance Services Contract.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Bradley Christopher, Assistant Director of Airports. Item I have for you today, Airport Grounds Maintenance Contract Services. Let's see. A little background. On March 7, 2022, an RFP was advertised for landside, street-side grounds maintenance contract services at both Eisenhower and Jabbar airports. We had two local vendors proposed. They were interviewed, evaluated, and ranked by the Staff Screening Selection Committee. Suburban Landscape Management, or SLM, was competitively selected based on total ranking of all the evaluation categories. SLM also, incidentally, submitted the lowest fee proposal as well. The selection process was reviewed and approved by the city's contract administrator and was found to comply with all city policies. Under the terms of the service agreement, it is for 3 years, 3-year term, plus 2 additional 1-year option terms upon the mutual agreement of both parties. Annual fees are $203,302 for the first year, and then $243,379 for years 2 and 3. There's a monthly cost is subject to adjustment based on fuel factor that's indexed to the average fuel price in Wichita for the previous month. And funds for this service agreement are included in the airport operating budget. So it's recommended that the Wichita Airport Authority approve the agreement and authorize the necessary signatures. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff? All right, seeing none. Input from the public on this item? Seeing none, bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there's no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the contract and authorize the necessary signatures. Is that the right one this time? Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open roll. Members will cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Selection of appeal panel to hear appeal of suspension of a drinking establishment license.
Mayor, I'll just take this one real quickly. You have a property at 212 West Harry that had its drinking establishment and entertainment licenses suspended by the police department in early April. The owner has appealed that suspension, and now under your new ordinance, the council needs to appoint an appeal panel. The ordinance indicates that the council member whose district whose district contains the property, they have to be on it, as well as you do a rotation, so the council members from districts 1 and 2 would be the appropriate people to serve on this panel. Council, though, has to formally approve the creation of the panel.
Okay. Is there discussion or questions for manager? The room's pretty empty. Is there any public discussion about this? Councilmember Hoheisel.
I'd just like to say that I think it's best we leave kids who are on field trips out of this particular part of our meeting. I think there's some ordinance language there that is not fit for public consumption, so it's very interesting. But this is a new process because we changed the way we do this a week ago, I believe, or the last council meeting. So this will be the first time, and I look forward to going through this process. Thank you.
All right, well, with that, let's go ahead and let you retain the floor for a motion.
Does that fall to me?
That's you.
All right. I recommend that the city council selects 3 council members to preside over administrative appeal of this license suspension.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Councilmember Fry and Councilmember Johnson both jumped on the board. So Councilmember Fry.
So don't we have to identify the 3 council members that are going to serve on this as part of the motion? To be
So
clear.
you want me to
I was
appoint
just
3
gonna
council members
suggest
now? Because usually,
That you should name council members from districts 1, 2, and 3 based on the ordinance.
all right, well, with that, I will appoint Councilmember Bluebog, Councilmember, you want to appoint it? You appoint it. Okay. Councilmember Hoheisel. Again, this was changed last week. Normally, when we do appointments, I give about a week for people to come and say, hey, if they want to be on it or not. So I apologize if we're making the appointments now. No one has, I think, talked to me about wanting to be on this yet. But Councilmember Hoheisel, if you would like to go ahead and further this.
Okay, I believe that the process is going to be, we're going to go through a cycle.
Oh,
And it
yes.
starts with districts 1 and 2, and then my district as well, since it resides in my district. So council members Johnson and Vice Mayor Tuttle will get to join in the fun with this one. So I suppose the motion is I recommend that the city council select council member Johnson, Hoheisel, and Vice Mayor Tuttle to preside over administrative appeal of the license suspension.
You lucked out. You lucked out, Councilmember Bluebog. So with that, there was a motion and a second already on the table. I will actually, is this a retraction of that motion or a substitute? How should we go about this?
I think we can just do it as a clarification.
Clarification. That's exactly how we're viewing this. Councilmember Johnson is now off the board, so I believe now is the time to for us to vote. So if the clerk will open a roll.
Just 1 minute, I'm going to have to restart this whole motion.
We have 6 yeas. Is there a seventh? 7 yeas. With that, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with appointments. I am reappointing to the Plumbers Board Larry Daltrey, Kirk Studdard, Curtis Uncle, and John Clark. I will also be reappointing to the Animal Control Board Richard Ruth and Catherine Jones. Are there other appointments? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to appoint Dr. Maskela Thomas to the Library Board of Directors and Dr. Ikram Ahmed to the District 1 Advisory Board.
Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to appoint Randy Mulliken to the Airport Advisory Board. I'd like to reappoint Claire Willenberg for the Historic Preservation Board.
Council.
I'd like to reappoint Renee Carrion to the Diversity and Inclusion Board and reappoint Shauna Millar to the Community Service Block Grant.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to appoint Ryan McDougall to the Community Development Block Grant Review Committee, and Bob Decker, I'd like to reappoint him to the Police and Fire Retirement Board.
All right. Is there any more appointments? If not, I'll make a motion to accept all those appointments.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. I was told that to publicly acknowledge that Randy Frazier has been reappointed by REAP to the Wichita Airport Advisory Board, so please let the record reflect that. All right, we're back on comments. Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Bob and our legal staff for getting us the severe weather information yesterday, getting that out and helping us with those procedures. So definitely appreciate that.
Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple things. I appreciate anybody and everybody that was able to come out to Open Streets for No More. It was awesome. It couldn't have been a better day, and I think that everyone enjoyed being out and participating in that event, so appreciate that. Also, last night we postponed my dab to this coming Monday so that we can discuss the bridge one more time, the Amadon Bridge, before it comes to council. And then, Bobby, I just had a question. Would you be able to give an update on Genesis? I've just been getting a couple emails about it, and maybe just easier to address it this way.
Not an open session.
Okay. Thank you.
Further comments? I did want to get an update from the city manager. There has been and I know we've been emailing about this, but I would like to also get a public statement for those who have been concerned about our Citizen Review Board ordinance and the amendments thereof. Apparently it's published without some of the amendments, and it was brought to our attention, so I just wanted to see where we're at with that, just for clarification for the folks who are worried about it.
I've been asked to review it, and I'm doing so. But I believe we have got everything, but I'll double check.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, then I will make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their votes. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Thank you all. We're adjourned.